The coffee cup shattered across Daniel Hart's lap, the exact moment Victoria Lane's Louboutin skidded on the cafe's wet floor, but the real collision happened when their eyes met and neither one looked away. In that suspended breath between stranger and something more dangerous, two people who'd spent years building walls around their hearts felt the first crack appear. She was the CEO everyone feared. He was the widower no one noticed. And in 72 hours, they'd both realized that some accidents are destiny wearing a disguise. Before we dive into this story, I want you with me until the very end. Hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's begin. The afternoon Daniel Hart chose to finally take a break from drowning was unremarkable in every way except one. It was the afternoon Victoria Lane stopped running long enough to fall. Daniel had left the bookstore. Hart and daughter, the hand-painted sign read, though there was no daughter there anymore, just him and the ghosts of better days, with exactly 43 minutes before Emma's school let out. 43 minutes to sit somewhere that didn't smell like old paper and broken dreams, to drink something hot that someone else made, to pretend for just a few breaths that he was more than a 34-year-old man whose biggest accomplishment was keeping his daughter fed and his grief private. The cafe was one of those aggressively cheerful places with Edison bulbs and reclaimed wood, the kind that charged $7 for coffee and made you feel sophisticated for overpaying. Daniel didn't care about sophistication. He cared about the corner table by the window where nobody bothered him, where he could watch the street and remember when Sarah used to meet him here on Thursdays, back when Thursdays meant something other than inventory day and overdue bills. He was halfway through a mediocre cappuccino and entirely through his capacity for optimism when the door chimed. She entered like weather, the kind you don't predict, just survive. Victoria Lane was 41 years old and looked like money, the earned kind, not the inherited variety. Tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly rent. Hair pulled back so severely it could have been a strategy. Heels that made a statement with every step. I own this room, and possibly this city, and definitely don't have time for your nonsense. She was on her phone, naturally. Her voice carried that particular frequency of authority that made baristas straighten their spines. I don't care what the board thinks, Marcus. We're not pushing the launch back because Henderson got cold feet. Tell him if he wants to stay relevant, he'll sign by Friday, and if he doesn't, we'll find someone who... That's when it happened. The cafe floor, freshly mopped by an overzealous employee trying to impress a manager who didn't notice, met the leather sole of a shoe designed for boardrooms, not physics. Victoria's heels slid. Her phone sailed. And in the half-second between vertical and horizontal, her body made a choice that would change two lives. She landed directly in Daniel's lap. Not near him. Not beside him. In his lap, with enough force to knock his cappuccino across the table and enough precision to make eye contact unavoidable. For 3 full seconds, neither of them moved. Daniel, because his brain had completely abandoned the task of processing reality. Victoria, because she'd just fallen, actually physically fallen, for the first time since she was 12, and thought dignity was negotiable. She started. You, he tried. Then she laughed. It wasn't polite laughter, the kind you deploy in business meetings when someone's joke isn't funny, but their position is important. This was real, startled, and genuine, and completely unguarded. It transformed her face from boardroom ice to something dangerously human. Daniel felt his own mouth curve despite himself. I was going to say you should buy me dinner first, but given the current economy, I'll settle for explaining why you just assaulted me with designer shoes. Victoria scrambled up, cheeks actually flushing like she was human, like she felt things, and offered her hand to help him up. He noticed her grip was firm, businesslike, but her palm was warm. I'm so sorry, she said, and meant it. I wasn't watching where my phone is. Did I hurt you? Only my dignity, and that was already pretty compromised. Daniel surveyed the damage. Coffee everywhere. His shirt sporting a new abstract pattern. Several other patrons staring with the kind of interest people reserve for free entertainment. Though my dry cleaner's going to have questions. Let me pay for that. And here. Victoria was already pulling out her wallet, extracting a business card and $100 bill in one smooth motion, the kind of efficiency that suggested she solved problems by throwing money at them until they disappeared. This should cover the shirt and your, what was it, cappuccino? Daniel looked at the money, then at her, then back at the money. That's $100, he said carefully. I'm aware of denominations, yes. My shirt cost $28. On sale 3 years ago. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe. Or the realization that she'd just revealed exactly how disconnected she was from the price of normal things. Keep it anyway, she said, but gentler now. Less transaction, more person. Call it an apology for... She gestured vaguely at his lap, at the coffee, at the general chaos she'd introduced to his quiet afternoon. I don't need your money, Daniel said, and it came out sharper than he'd intended. He softened it with a smile that felt rusty from disuse. But I'll take the apology, and maybe you could watch where you're falling next time. I don't make a habit of falling. Clearly, you're terrible at it. She laughed again, and this time it sounded almost surprised, like she'd forgotten that was something she could do. I'm Victoria. Daniel. They shook hands properly this time, and Daniel noticed things he probably shouldn't have. The callus on her right index finger from holding pens too tight, the faint circles under her eyes that makeup almost hid, the way she stood like someone ready to fight or flee at a moment's notice. Well, Daniel, Victoria retrieved her phone from where it had skittered under a nearby table, screen miraculously intact. Thank you for being a gentleman about my assault on your person, and your cappuccino. It was a terrible cappuccino anyway, he admitted. You might have done me a favor. High praise indeed. She was already turning toward the door, already transitioning back into whoever she'd been before gravity intervened. Then she paused. The bookstore across the street, Heart and Daughter, is that yours? Daniel blinked. You noticed that? I notice everything. It wasn't a brag, just fact. It's a lovely shop, old-fashioned in the best way. Old-fashioned, he repeated. That's generous. Most people say dated or quaint or how are you still in business? I said what I meant. Victoria's phone buzzed insistently. She glanced at it and Daniel watched her face resettle into its earlier mask. Controlled, cool, untouchable. I have to go, but thank you for not suing me. I'll consider it for next time. Let's not have a next time. She left trailing the scent of expensive perfume and the kind of purposeful energy that suggested she had 6 important places to be and was already late to all of them. Daniel sat back down in his coffee-soaked chair and stared at his ruined shirt. He had 36 minutes until Emma got out of school. He was smiling and couldn't quite remember when that had started. But 3 days later, Victoria Lane stood in her corner office on the 42nd floor and wondered when looking down had stopped feeling like power and started feeling like distance. The city sprawled below her, all glass and ambition and tiny people living tiny lives she'd stopped relating to, somewhere between her second startup and her first Forbes feature. At 26, she'd built her first company from a dorm room and a credit card. At 32, she'd sold it for enough money to never work again and immediately started working harder. Now, at 41, she ran Tech Vista, a company that employed 4,000 people and made technology that supposedly brought humans closer together. The irony wasn't lost on her. She just chose to ignore it. Victoria? Her assistant Marcus appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, face arranged in its perpetual expression of controlled panic. The Japan team needs an answer on the Hiroki deal, and Henderson's lawyers sent over the revised contract. Also, your mother called. 3 times. Tell Japan yes, tell Henderson's lawyers we're not budging on the intellectual property clause, and tell my mother I'll call her back. You said that yesterday. Then I'll say it with more conviction today. Victoria didn't look away from the window. Anything else? Marcus hesitated, which meant bad news was coming. The board wants to move up the quarterly review to next week. They're concerned about the latest user retention numbers. Of course they were. The board was always concerned about something: numbers, optics, competition, the fact that Victoria refused to pretend the company was a family when it was clearly a machine designed to generate profit. Schedule it, she said, and tell them if they want better retention numbers, Maybe they should stop pressuring me to implement features that prioritize advertising revenue over user experience. I'll rephrase that for diplomacy. You're good at that. Marcus left, and Victoria was alone again with her view and her thoughts, and the persistent feeling that she'd won a game that didn't matter. Her phone rang. Not the work line, her personal cell, which exactly 4 people had the number to, and 3 of them were employees. "Hello, Mother." "Victoria Ann Lane, are you avoiding me?" Patricia Lane's voice could cut glass and frequently did. She was 71 years old, lived in a brownstone in Brooklyn that had been in the family for 3 generations, and possessed the supernatural ability to make her daughter feel 12 years old with a single sentence. "I'm not avoiding you. I'm working." "You're always working. When was the last time you ate something that wasn't delivered to your office?" Victoria mentally scrolled through the past 3 days and came up empty. Tuesday. It's Friday. Then Tuesday was recent. This isn't healthy, sweetheart. You're going to burn yourself out, and for what? Another 0 on your net worth? Victoria pinched the bridge of her nose, a headache forming behind her eyes that had nothing to do with the fluorescent lights and everything to do with this conversation. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're 41 years old, you live alone in that sterile apartment, you work 80-hour weeks, and the last time you mentioned a friend, not a colleague, a friend, was 18 months ago." "I have friends." "Name one who isn't on your payroll." Victoria opened her mouth, closed it. "That's what I thought," Patricia said, gentler now, which was somehow worse than the criticism. "I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I just want you to have a life, not just a career. My career is my life. I chose that. Choosing something doesn't mean it's right. You chose not to eat for 3 days, too. I'm hanging up now. Come to dinner Sunday. I'm making lasagna. I have work. Victoria, Sunday, 6 o'clock. I'm your mother, not your employee. You can't reschedule me." The line went dead. Victoria stood there holding her silent phone and wondering when exactly she'd become the kind of person who needed to be bullied into eating dinner with her own mother. The city below offered no answers. Emma Hart was 8 years old and understood things she probably shouldn't. She understood that Daddy didn't smile as much as he used to, back when Mommy was alive and the bookstore made money and grown-ups didn't have quiet arguments about bills they thought she couldn't hear. She understood that when Daddy said, "We're fine, sweetheart," what he really meant was, "I'm trying as hard as I can, and I hope it's enough." She understood that she needed to be good. Not kid good, but perfect good, so Daddy wouldn't have to worry about her on top of everything else. But right now, walking home from school with her hand in his, what Emma understood most was that something had changed. "You're humming," she said. Daniel stopped mid-hum. "Was I?" "Uh-huh. You never hum. Not since—" She trailed off because they both knew how that sentence ended. "I had a weird afternoon the other day," Daniel said, which was true but incomplete. "Met someone interesting." Emma's eyes went huge. At 8, she was already a romantic, sustained on a diet of fairy tales and the unshakable belief that everyone deserved a happy ending, especially her daddy. "A lady?" "A woman who fell on me in a coffee shop and tried to pay me $100 for my $28 shirt." "Was she pretty?" "She was terrifying." "That's not an answer." Daniel looked down at his daughter. So small, so smart, so much like Sarah it sometimes hurt to breathe, and decided that lying to her had never worked anyway. "Yeah," he admitted. "She was pretty, in a scary, successful, way out of my league kind of way." "Nobody's out of your league, Daddy. You're the best." His heart cracked and mended simultaneously, the way it always did when Emma said things like that with complete conviction. They reached the bookstore just as the afternoon light hit it at that particular angle that made the old building look almost magical instead of just old. Hart and daughter. Established. 1987, the sign proclaimed. Though Daniel's father had started it and Daniel had inherited it, along with the debt and the slowly dwindling customer base and the impossible dream of keeping it alive. Inside, the store smelled like paper and possibility. Shelves climbed to the ceiling, crammed with everything from first editions to damaged stock Daniel couldn't bear to throw away. There was a children's corner where Emma did her homework, a comfortable chair where regulars knew they could read for hours without being bothered, and a constantly optimistic golden retriever named Tolstoy who greeted every customer like they were his favorite person. It was home, and it was failing, and Daniel was running out of ideas to save it. "Can I pick today's window display?" Emma asked, already heading for the children's section. "Nothing too weird. You said that about the dinosaur tea party, and everyone loved it." "Everyone including the 3 customers we had that day?" Emma wrinkled her nose at him, and Daniel felt that fierce, overwhelming wave of love that parenthood had taught him, the kind that made every struggle worthwhile and every failure unbearable. The bell above the door chimed. Daniel looked up from the register, expecting Mrs. Chen, who came every Friday for the latest cozy mystery, or maybe Tom, who browsed for hours and bought nothing but whose company Daniel had come to appreciate. Instead, Victoria Lane walked in. She looked different without the suit, still polished, still expensive, but softer somehow, in dark jeans and a cream sweater that probably cost more than Daniel's winter coat. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders in a way that made her look younger, less armored. Their eyes met, and Daniel watched surprise register on her face, followed by something that might have been pleasure. "The gentleman I assaulted," she said. "We meet again. In my natural habitat this time." Daniel came around the counter, suddenly aware that he was wearing his 3rd favorite shirt because his 2 favorite ones were in the laundry. "I promise the floor's less slippery here. I'll try to restrain myself anyway." Victoria looked around, and Daniel tried to see the store through her eyes, cluttered, chaotic, charming in a desperate kind of way. "This place is wonderful. This place is a mess." Wonderful and messy aren't mutually exclusive. She trailed her fingers along a shelf of poetry, pulled out a worn copy of Mary Oliver, smiled at it like greeting an old friend. "I had a bookstore like this near my college. Spent more time there than in class." "How'd that work out for you?" "I dropped out junior year to start my first company." Victoria replaced the book carefully, precisely where she'd found it. "Best decision I ever made, academically speaking. Socially, it was probably a disaster." Before Daniel could respond, Emma appeared from behind a shelf, Tolstoy at her heels, both of them studying Victoria with identical expressions of curious interest. "Hi," Emma said, with the fearless directness of 8-year-olds everywhere. "Are you the scary, pretty lady who fell on my dad?" Victoria's laugh was startled and genuine. "That's an accurate, if unflattering, summary, yes." "I'm Emma. This is Tolstoy. He's a dog, but also my best friend besides Daddy. Are you here to buy books or just to look at Daddy?" "Emma," Daniel said, cheeks heating, "people are allowed to just browse." "She's not browsing. She's looking at you." Victoria knelt down to Emma's level, and Daniel watched something in her face shift, soften, become achingly vulnerable. "You're very observant," Victoria said seriously. "Your dad mentioned a daughter, but didn't mention she was clever." "He doesn't like to brag, but I'm very clever, and I read 4 grades above my level." "What are you reading now?" Emma launched into an enthusiastic summary of The Phantom Toll Booth that involved plot points, character analysis, and a digression about whether infinity was a number or a concept. Victoria listened with complete attention, asking questions that suggested she actually cared about the answers, not just performing interest. Daniel watched them together and felt something dangerous stir in his chest. Not attraction, though that was there too, but hope, the treacherous, fragile kind that whispered maybe and what if. "I should let you get back to work," Victoria said eventually, standing. "I actually just came in because I remembered this place and thought I'd see what you had." "Did you find anything?" "I found more than I expected." She pulled out that same business card from the cafe, wrote something on the back and handed it to Daniel. "My personal number, in case you ever want to grab coffee. Somewhere with better flooring." Emma was practically vibrating with excitement. Daniel took the card, their fingers brushing briefly. "You give your personal number to everyone you assault?" "Only the ones who don't make me feel like an alien pretending to be human." She left before he could figure out what that meant. Emma grabbed his arm. "Daddy, Daddy, you have to call her." "She's just being polite." "She wrote her personal number. That's not polite. That's interested." "When did you become an expert on adult relationships?" "When you became terrible at noticing when pretty ladies like you." Daniel looked at the card. Victoria's handwriting was precise, controlled, but she'd added a small detail he almost missed. A tiny smiley face next to her name. Something about that small, silly gesture, so at odds with everything else about her, made him smile. "Maybe," he said. Emma squealed. Tolstoy barked. And Daniel pocketed the card, feeling like maybe, just maybe, the universe was throwing him a line instead of another punch. Victoria made it 3 blocks before she stopped walking and stood very still on the sidewalk, trying to understand what had just happened. She'd given him her number, her personal number. She didn't do that. She had a system, work phone for work, personal phone for the 4 people who mattered, nothing crossing those boundaries because boundaries kept life manageable. And yet, there had been something about the way he'd looked at her, not at her resume, her net worth, her reputation, but at her, the person underneath all that armor. Something about his daughter, bright-eyed and unimpressed by status. Something about that bookstore, cluttered and failing and full of love anyway. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, with another crisis that needed solving. Victoria answered it, slipped back into her CEO voice, and started walking toward her next obligation. But she kept thinking about the way Daniel had smiled when his daughter teased him, the gentleness in his hands when he'd straightened a crooked book, the fact that he'd turned down $100 because it mattered to him not to need it. She'd spent 20 years building an empire, and she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt as real as she had in those 15 minutes, surrounded by dusty books and golden retriever hair and a man who saw her fall and helped her up without asking for anything in return. That night, alone in her sterile apartment with its expensive furniture and its overwhelming quiet, Victoria made a decision that terrified her. She was going to call him. Not because it made sense, not because it fit into her carefully structured life, but because for the first time in longer than she could remember, something felt like possibility instead of obligation. And maybe that was enough. The weekend passed in that strange, suspended way time has when you're waiting for something you're not sure you deserve. Daniel didn't call Victoria, even though Emma asked him approximately 400 times why he hadn't called Victoria. "I'm giving her space," he said, which was partially true. "You're being scared," Emma countered, which was entirely true. Saturday brought the usual rhythm. Inventory, customers, 7, not terrible, not good, lunch with Emma at the diner that knew their order by heart, an afternoon helping Mrs. Chen find the next book in her series while Emma read in the window seat with Tolstoy's head in her lap. Normal, comfortable, safe. Sunday morning, Daniel's phone rang. Unknown number, but something made him answer anyway. "Daniel, it's Victoria, Lane, from the bookstore, and the coffee assault." "I remember," he said, pulse quickening. "Hard to forget someone who destroys your cappuccino and your composure in one fell swoop." "I have a gift for efficiency." She sounded different on the phone, less certain, more human. "I was wondering if you'd had lunch yet. It's 10 in the morning. I'm aware. I'm asking in advance because spontaneity makes me anxious, and I like to have plans." Daniel laughed. "That's the most honest thing I've heard all week." "Is that a yes?" Emma appeared from nowhere, pressed her ear against the phone, and nodded so hard her pigtails bounced. "Yes," Daniel said, "but Emma's coming too. Package deal." "I was hoping she would. I'll pick you both up at noon. Dress casual. I promise not to take you anywhere that requires pronunciation guides for the menu." She hung up before he could overthink it. Emma grabbed his hands and literally jumped up and down. "We're going on a date." "It's lunch, between adults, and a child chaperone. It's a date and you like her and she likes you, and this is the best thing that's happened since Tolstoy learned to high five." Daniel couldn't argue with that logic, mostly because he was too busy trying to remember if he owned anything that qualified as nice casual, and whether it was too late to panic. At 11:58, a car pulled up outside the bookstore. Not a flashy car, Daniel noted with some relief, just a nice, normal, slightly too expensive sedan that suggested success without shouting it. Victoria stepped out wearing jeans, boots, and a leather jacket that made her look like she could run a board meeting or a motorcycle gang with equal competence. "Hi," she said, and smiled and looked nervous, which somehow made Daniel less nervous. "Hi yourself." Emma exploded out of the bookstore. You're here, and you're pretty, and you drive a nice car. Where are we going? Emma, Daniel said, indoor voice, and manners. Those were manners. I didn't ask about her salary or her romantic history. Victoria laughed. That real, unguarded laugh Daniel was starting to catalog as his favorite sound. I like her. She grows on you, Daniel admitted. Like mold, but friendlier. They drove to a park Daniel had never been to, the kind with actual grass and trees instead of concrete and corporate sponsorships. Victoria had packed a picnic, and not a show-off picnic either, just sandwiches, fruit, and cookies that came from an actual bakery instead of a personal chef. I wasn't sure what you liked, she said, spreading out a blanket. So I got a variety and figured we'd negotiate. Emma immediately claimed 3 cookies and settled under a tree with a book, giving them space while maintaining clear eavesdropping distance. She's subtle, Victoria observed. She's 8 and determined to fix my love life. How's that going for her? You're here, aren't you? They ate and talked. And it was easy in a way Daniel hadn't expected. Victoria asked about the bookstore. Not polite questions, but real ones about margins and inventory and how he competed with online retailers. He asked about her work, and she told him about the company without making it sound like a resume, just a thing she did that mattered to her. Why a bookstore? Victoria asked eventually. Not why your father started it. Why do you keep it going? Daniel looked at Emma, absorbed in her book, safe and happy and exactly where she needed to be. Because it's hers too, he said quietly. Her name is on the sign. Her mother died there. Heart attack, 3 years ago, right by the poetry section. Emma found her. Victoria's hand found his, squeezed. The rational thing would have been to sell, Daniel continued. Take the money, find something stable, give Emma a normal life without debt and struggle and watching her dad worry about making rent. But that store is the last place Sarah was alive. It's where Emma learned to read. It's where I proposed in the romance section because I was 24 and thought I was being clever. That's actually very clever. Sarah thought so too. He smiled at the memory. Sarah laughing, saying yes, kissing him between shelves of happily ever afters. So I keep it open. Even though it's failing, even though I'm probably a fool. You're not a fool, Victoria said fiercely. You're someone who knows what matters. What matters is keeping my daughter happy and safe. The bookstore just happens to be part of that equation. Tell me about her, Sarah. So he did. Not the sanitized version he gave strangers, but the real thing. How they'd met in college, how she'd been studying literature while he studied business, how they dreamed of combining those passions into something beautiful, how she'd been funny and stubborn and terrible at mornings, how she'd loved Emma with a ferocity that made the universe seem like it had a point, and how Daniel had spent 3 years learning to live in a world where she didn't exist anymore. Victoria listened without interrupting, without offering platitudes, just held his hand and let him talk until the words ran out. I'm sorry, she said when he finished, that you lost her, that Emma lost her, that love isn't fair. You sound like someone who knows. Different loss, but loss all the same. Victoria pulled her knees to her chest, looked out at the park, where Emma was now trying to teach Tolstoy to fetch. I was engaged once, 10 years ago, to someone I thought understood me. What happened? He proposed. I accepted. We set a date. And then I realized he didn't love me. He loved the idea of being married to someone successful. Every conversation became about my career, my connections, how I could help his startup. I was a resource, not a partner. So you left. So I left. And I decided that was it. No more vulnerability, no more trusting people with the parts of me that could be hurt. Just work, success, control. How's that working out for you? Victoria's laugh was hollow. I'm very successful and very alone and very good at pretending those things are unrelated. Victoria, I don't know why I'm telling you this. She turned to look at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. I don't talk about this with anyone, but you asked about Sarah and I wanted you to know that I understand what it's like to protect yourself by not letting anyone close. Daniel thought about the 3 years he'd spent going through the motions, raising Emma, running the store, existing but not living, about how he'd convinced himself that was enough, that wanting more was selfish. Maybe we're both a little broken, he said. Maybe broken people are the only ones honest enough to admit it. Emma ran over then, breathless and grass-stained and absolutely delighted with herself. Tolstoy caught the stick 3 times. I think he's part genius. Victoria wiped her eyes discreetly. He's definitely special. So are you, Emma said, with the devastating directness of children. You make Daddy smile like he means it. And just like that, the heavy moment cracked open and let light in. They spent the rest of the afternoon being ridiculous. Emma teaching Victoria complicated hand-clapping games, Daniel trying to explain cricket to an American audience of 2 and failing spectacularly, all 3 of them lying on the blanket and finding shapes in clouds. It was normal and weird and perfect. At 4 o'clock, Victoria drove them home. At the bookstore door, Emma hugged Victoria goodbye with the confidence of someone who knew she'd be seeing her again. Victoria and Daniel stood there awkwardly. 2 adults suddenly teenagers again, unsure of protocols. I had a really nice time, Daniel said. Me too. Victoria hesitated, then kissed his cheek, quick and soft. Call me, not because you think you should, but if you want to. I want to. Good. She left, and Daniel stood there touching his cheek like an idiot, while Emma watched with supreme satisfaction. You like her, Emma sing-songed. I barely know her. You know enough. She's sad like you're sad, but happy when she's here, that's important. Daniel looked at his 8-year-old daughter, who apparently understood emotional intelligence better than he did. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You were just too sad to notice. She went inside, leaving Daniel on the doorstep with his thoughts and the lingering scent of expensive perfume and the terrifying realization that maybe, possibly, he was starting to feel something that wasn't grief. It was hope. And it was absolutely terrifying. The following Tuesday arrived with rain that turned the city gray and soft, the kind of weather that made people want to stay inside with hot drinks and good books. Daniel should have been thrilled. Rain was excellent for bookstore business. Instead, he kept checking his phone like a teenager, wondering if it was too soon to text Victoria, too eager, too desperate. Emma had no such concerns. Just text her, Daddy, she said from her homework spot, not even looking up from her math problems. Say something nice, like, I had fun, or you're pretty, or want to come over for dinner because my daughter is an excellent chef's assistant and also very charming. I'm not using your script. Your script is taking too long. She had a point. Daniel had typed and deleted 6 different messages, each one sounding either too casual or too intense. How did people do this? How did they navigate the space between I enjoyed spending time with you and I can't stop thinking about you and it's terrifying? His phone buzzed. Victoria's name lit up the screen, and Daniel's heart did something acrobatic and undignified. Are you free Thursday evening? I have a work thing. Charity gala, very boring, very fancy. Need a +1 who won't try to network with me all night. Emma appeared over his shoulder. Say yes. Obviously say yes. Why are you not typing yes? Because I don't own a tux. Then say yes and we'll figure out the tux. Daddy, this is a Cinderella moment. Don't mess it up. Daniel typed. I don't have formal wear that wouldn't embarrass you. The response came immediately. You could show up in a bathrobe and I'd still rather have you there than anyone else. But there's a rental place on 5th if you want to blend in with the Penguin convention. He smiled despite himself. What time should I pick you up? I'll send a car at 7. Fair warning, there will be speeches. Long ones. And terrible wine that costs too much. Sounds terrible. I'll be ready. Emma actually cheered. You're going to a ball with a princess who's actually a CEO, but that's basically modern royalty. It's a work event, not a ball. It's a gala. Galas are fancy balls. I looked it up. Daniel pulled her into a hug, marveling as always at how someone so small could contain so much certainty. What am I going to do with you? Love me forever, and let me stay up late to hear all about the gala when you get home. Deal. That night, after Emma was asleep and the bookstore was quiet, Daniel stood in front of his closet and confronted the reality that he owned exactly 0 things appropriate for charity galas. His nicest outfit was the suit he'd worn to Sarah's funeral, and he absolutely was not wearing that. He called the rental place on 5th, The woman who answered sounded professionally perky. Tuxedo Rentals, this is Melissa. How can I help you? I need a tux for Thursday, something that won't make me look like I'm playing dress up. We can absolutely do that. What's the occasion? Charity gala with someone way out of my league who, for some inexplicable reason, invited me anyway. Melissa's voice warmed with understanding. Oh, honey, we get that a lot. Come in tomorrow, we'll set you up. And bring a photo of her. We'll match your tie to her probable dress color. Trust me, it matters. Daniel found himself smiling. You're good at this. 10 years of making nervous men look confident. It's basically my superpower. Wednesday afternoon, Daniel closed the bookstore early, a luxury he couldn't really afford but convinced himself was an investment, and took Emma with him to the rental place. Melissa turned out to be a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and the commanding presence of someone who knew exactly what worked and wouldn't tolerate arguments. She looked Daniel up and down with professional assessment. 6'1", athletic build, good shoulders. We can work with this? Classic black or modern slim fit? I have no idea what those words mean in this context. Classic it is. You've got that timeless thing going, let's not fight it. She started pulling options. Your daughter can help pick. Kids have good instincts about this stuff. Emma took her job very seriously, rejecting 3 tuxedos for reasons ranging from too boring to makes you look like a waiter to I don't like the buttons. The 4th one made her gasp. That one. Definitely that one. Daniel looked in the mirror and barely recognized himself. The tux fit perfectly, elegant without being showy, the kind of thing that suggested he belonged at fancy events even though he absolutely didn't. Your daughter's right, Melissa said. That's the one. Now about this woman who's out of your league, you got a photo? Daniel pulled up Victoria's company headshot on his phone, the professional one from Tech Vista's website. Melissa whistled low. Okay, she's gorgeous, she's powerful, and judging by that suit, she'll probably wear something in the jewel tone family. I'm thinking emerald green or deep sapphire. We'll go with a classic black tie, silver cufflinks, keep you sophisticated but not competing with her for attention. I wasn't planning to compete for attention. Good. Men who try to upstage their dates are men who go home alone. She started assembling accessories with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. You nervous? Terrified. Even better, means you care. Men who aren't nervous are either lying or not worth her time. Melissa rang up the rental, then leaned across the counter conspiratorially. Advice from someone who's been married 32 years. Just be yourself. She invited you, not some fantasy version. That means she likes what she's seen so far. What if what she's seen so far was a fluke? Then Thursday will be a very educational evening for both of you, but I don't think it will be. She handed him the garment bag with a smile. Go get her, bookstore boy. Emma grabbed his hand as they left. Melissa was nice and smart and right about you being nervous. When did everyone in my life become a relationship expert? When you stopped being good at it yourself. Thursday arrived with the kind of clear, cold evening that made the city look like it was trying to impress someone. Daniel spent the day alternating between excitement and panic, which made him useless for anything requiring concentration or competence. Mrs. Chen came in for her weekly mystery and took one look at him. You're distracted. What happened? I have a date. Tonight. Formal. Oh, with the woman from Sunday? Daniel blinked. How did you... Emma told me. She's very excited. Also very proud of herself for the matchmaking. Mrs. Chen selected her book with the careful deliberation of someone who took reading seriously. This woman, she makes you smile. Yes. She treats you with respect. Yes. Then stop panicking and enjoy yourself. Life's too short for anything else. She paid for her book and paused at the door. Your Sarah would want you to be happy, Daniel. Don't forget that. She left before he could find words past the sudden tightness in his throat. At 6:30, Daniel stood in his bathroom trying to remember how to tie a bow tie, while Emma provided color commentary from the doorway. More to the left. No, your other left. Daddy, are you sure you went to college? I majored in business, not formal wear origami. YouTube it. He did, and after 3 attempts that looked progressively less like dead birds, he managed something that approximated professional. The tux fit even better than it had in the store. Daniel looked at himself in the mirror and saw someone he almost didn't recognize, someone who looked like they belonged at galas, who looked confident and put together and not at all like a struggling bookstore owner who still cried sometimes when he found Sarah's bookmarks in random novels. "You look like a prince," Emma breathed. "A real one, not the cartoon kind." Princes don't own failing businesses and wear rented tuxedos. The good ones do. The interesting ones. At 7 exactly, because of course Victoria would send a car that arrived exactly on time, a sleek black sedan pulled up outside. Emma hugged him so tight his ribs protested. "Have fun. Be yourself. Tell her she's pretty. Don't talk about boring stuff like taxes." That's a lot of instructions. You need a lot of instructions. You're out of practice. The driver was a pleasant older man who made polite small talk about the weather and traffic, carefully not mentioning that he was driving a nervous wreck in a rented tux to pick up a woman who probably had a dozen better options. They pulled up to a building that made Daniel's apartment look like a dollhouse. Doorman, marble lobby, the kind of elevator that probably cost more than his car. Victoria's apartment was on the 30th floor. Daniel knocked, palms sweating despite the temperature-controlled hallway. She opened the door, and Daniel forgot how language worked. The dress was midnight blue, elegant and simple and devastating. Her hair was up, showing the line of her neck. Diamond earrings caught the light. She looked like money and power and beauty, and Daniel felt like an absolute fraud standing there in his rented penguin suit. Then she smiled, and the goddess became a person again. "You clean up well," she said. "You clean up better. You look incredible. I'm going to stop talking now before I embarrass both of us." "Please don't. I like it when you're flustered. It's reassuring." She grabbed a small clutch, locked her door. "Fair warning, this event is going to be 90% insufferable people pretending to care about charity while actually networking. I need you to be my escape route." "How do I do that?" "Just be real. Everyone else will be performing. You just have to exist." They rode down in the elevator in comfortable silence, and Daniel noticed Victoria's hands were shaking slightly. "You're nervous," he said, surprised. "I hate these things. Necessary evil for the job, but I'd rather negotiate hostile takeovers than make small talk with people who think their donation amount correlates with their worth as humans." "So why bring me?" She looked at him, really looked, and her voice went soft. "Because you remind me that there's a world outside all this. And I needed that reminder tonight." The gala was held in a hotel ballroom that looked like someone had weaponized elegance. Crystal chandeliers, tables set with more silverware than any human needed, a string quartet playing tasteful background music. Women in designer gowns, men in tuxedos that probably weren't rented, everyone performing the careful dance of wealth and influence. Daniel felt immediately out of place. Victoria's hand found his. "Breathe. You belong here as much as anyone. More, actually, because you're not pretending." They made their way through the crowd, and Daniel watched Victoria transform. Not completely, she was still herself, still sharp and competent, but there was a mask that slid into place, a professional veneer that kept everyone at exactly the right distance. People approached constantly. Board members, donors, other CEOs whose names Daniel recognized from business sections he'd never read. Victoria introduced him simply as Daniel. No title, no explanation, and something about that felt both terrifying and right. "And what do you do, Daniel?" asked a man whose watch probably cost more than Daniel's car. The question came with that particular tone, polite interest covering calculation, measuring Daniel's worth by his profession. "I run a bookstore," Daniel said, and felt Victoria's hand tighten on his. "How quaint." The man had already lost interest, eyes scanning the room for more valuable connections. "If you'll excuse me." He drifted away, and Victoria turned to Daniel with fire in her eyes. "I hate that. The instant dismissal. Like the only thing that matters is how much money you make or power you have. It's fine. I'm used to it. It's not fine. You own a business. Employ yourself, provide a community service, raise a daughter alone. That's worth 10 of him. You don't have to defend me. I'm not defending you. I'm stating facts." She pulled him toward the bar. "I need champagne. Bad champagne that costs too much, but champagne nonetheless." They got drinks. She was right. The champagne was terrible. and found a corner where they could observe without being constantly interrupted. "Thank you for coming," Victoria said quietly. "I know this isn't your world." "It's not really yours either, is it?" She looked surprised. "What makes you say that?" "You're good at it. The networking, the small talk, the performance. But you're not enjoying it, you're enduring it. Perceptive and handsome. Dangerous combination." "I'm serious. You look like you're playing a role." Victoria was quiet for a moment, watching the crowd with something like sadness. "When I started my first company, I was 26 and people took me seriously. I wore jeans to meetings, said what I meant, didn't play games. Then I sold that company and started the next one. And suddenly I was in rooms like this, and I realized that to be taken seriously, I had to become someone else. Someone polished and controlled and strategic. Did it work? I'm worth $400 million and run a company with 4,000 employees. So yes, it worked. But some days I can't remember who I was before I became this person." Daniel thought about that. About the cost of success. About what you had to give up to get what you wanted. About how much of yourself you could lose while still calling it winning. "I think she's still in there," he said. "The woman who wore jeans to meetings. She just learned to code switch." "That's a generous interpretation. It's an accurate one. You were real with me, in the bookstore, at the park. That wasn't performance." "No," Victoria admitted. "That was terrifying." Before Daniel could respond, a woman in a red dress approached with the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Victoria, darling, I was hoping you'd be here." Air kisses, theatrical and meaningless. "And who is this handsome companion?" "Daniel Hart. Daniel, this is Clarissa Montgomery. She runs the Montgomery Foundation. Yes, we fund arts education. Very important work." Clarissa's eyes assessed Daniel with the precision of someone conducting an appraisal. "Hart. Any relation to the Hartford Hearts?" "No, just the bookstore Hearts." "How lovely." Translation. Irrelevant. "Victoria, we simply must talk about the literacy initiative. I have some thoughts on your latest proposal." She pulled Victoria away with the determination of someone used to getting what she wanted, leaving Daniel alone in the corner with his terrible champagne and his rented tux. He watched Victoria get absorbed into a circle of important people discussing important things, watched her smile and nod and perform, and felt the gulf between their worlds yawn wider. A hand clapped his shoulder. "You look like you're contemplating escape routes." The man was about Daniel's age, friendly face, genuine smile. "I'm Marcus, Victoria's assistant/professional panic manager." "Daniel, her—" He wasn't sure how to finish that sentence. "I know who you are. She talks about you." "She does?" "Don't sound so surprised. You made an impression, the good kind." Marcus snagged 2 fresh glasses of champagne from a passing server. "Fair warning, these events are terrible. But they're less terrible if you understand the game." "What's the game?" "Everyone here is performing. Wealth, power, importance. They're all trying to prove they matter by how many other important people they know. It's exhausting and mostly pointless." Marcus gestured toward Victoria, surrounded by her circle. "She's good at it because she has to be. But it costs her." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because in 3 years of working for her, I've never seen her bring a date to one of these things. She keeps her personal life locked down tight. The fact that you're here, that means something." Daniel processed that. "You're telling me not to run away. I'm telling you that she's probably panicking right now, wondering if you think she belongs with these people instead of you. So when she glances over here, which she's done 4 times in the last 3 minutes, smile. Let her know you're not going anywhere." Marcus drifted away, and Daniel watched Victoria across the room. Sure enough, her eyes found his, questioning, worried. He smiled, raised his glass slightly. Her shoulders relaxed. She smiled back. The next hour was a blur of introductions Daniel would never remember. Conversations about markets and initiatives and strategic partnerships that might as well have been in another language. But every time Victoria looked overwhelmed, every time the mask threatened to crack, she'd find Daniel in the crowd, and something in her would settle. Dinner was announced. They were seated at a table with 6 other people. 2 more CEOs, a venture capitalist, a philanthropist, and someone whose title was so complicated Daniel immediately forgot it. The conversation turned to business strategy, quarterly projections, market disruptions. Daniel ate his overpriced meal and tried to look interested while understanding maybe 30% of what was being discussed. Then the venture capitalist, Richard something, expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive everything, turned to Daniel. So, bookstore. That must be challenging in the digital age. How are you surviving the Amazon apocalypse? It wasn't a genuine question. It was a test, maybe, or just condescension dressed as interest. We're not, Daniel said honestly. Surviving, I mean. We're barely hanging on, but we're still there. Have you considered diversifying? Ebooks, maybe? Online presence? I have a website that I built myself using a template from 2015. It looks terrible and barely functions. Our online presence is Emma, my daughter, posting book recommendations on Instagram to her 37 followers, most of whom are her stuffed animals. Someone at the table snorted. Victoria's lips twitched. Richard looked puzzled, like Daniel was speaking a foreign language. But surely there's a strategy, a growth plan? My strategy is to keep the doors open another month. My growth plan is to maybe someday afford to fix the heating system that sounds like it's summoning demons. I'm not trying to disrupt the industry or corner a market. I'm just trying to sell books to people who still think they matter. Books do matter, said the philanthropist quietly. She was older, kind eyes, less performance than the others. I grew up in a small bookstore in Vermont. It saved my life more than once. That's what I'm hoping for, Daniel said. Not to change the world, just to be there when someone needs saving. The table went quiet. Then Victoria's hand found his under the table, squeezed gently, and Daniel realized he'd said something right without trying. The rest of dinner was easier. People asked him real questions about the bookstore, about Emma, about what it was like running a small business in a world that increasingly didn't care about small anything. He answered honestly, without polish or performance, and something about that honesty seemed to disarm the usual networking dynamics. After dinner came speeches, long ones, just as Victoria had warned. CEOs and donors, congratulating themselves on their charity while cameras flashed. Daniel felt his eyes glazing over somewhere around the third speech about leveraging synergies for community impact. Victoria leaned close, whispered, "Want to escape?" Desperately. "Follow my lead." She stood gracefully, leaned down to whisper something to Clarissa, then took Daniel's hand and led him out of the ballroom. They walked quickly, purposefully, like they had somewhere important to be that wasn't here. They ended up on a balcony overlooking the city, cold air shocking after the stuffy warmth inside. "I probably just committed professional suicide," Victoria said, not sounding particularly concerned. "You don't leave your own charity gala during the speeches." "We can go back?" "We absolutely cannot. I've hit my tolerance limit for performative philanthropy." She leaned against the railing, closed her eyes. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being exactly who you are, for not trying to impress anyone, for making Richard actually think about what matters instead of just market share." "I didn't do anything special." "That's why it was special." She opened her eyes, looked at him with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. "Do you know what it's like to spend your entire life performing? Being strategic about everything? What you say, how you say it, who you say it to? It's exhausting. So stop. It's not that simple. Isn't it? You're Victoria Lane. You run a billion-dollar company. You can do whatever you want." "That's exactly the problem. I can do anything except figure out what I actually want." The city sparkled below them, millions of lights representing millions of lives, all of them simpler than this moment. "What do you want right now?" Daniel asked. Victoria turned to face him fully, and there was something vulnerable in her expression, something that made Daniel's heart ache. "I want to stop being afraid," she said quietly. "I want to kiss you without calculating the implications or worrying about what it means or whether I'm making a mistake." Those sound like good wants. They're terrifying wants. The best ones usually are. She stepped closer. "You're supposed to talk me out of this. Tell me it's too fast, too complicated, that we're from different worlds. We are from different worlds, and it is too fast, and probably too complicated." Daniel cupped her face gently, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "And I don't care about any of that right now." She kissed him. It wasn't tentative or careful. It was real. Months or maybe years of loneliness compressed into a single moment of connection. Her hands in his hair, his arms around her waist, both of them kissing like they were trying to prove something to the universe that had kept them apart. When they broke apart, both breathless, Victoria laughed, shocked and delighted, and slightly undone. "Well," she said, "that was definitely not strategic. How do you feel about that?" "Terrified and happy, which might be the same thing." They stayed on the balcony until the cold drove them inside, talking about nothing important and everything that mattered. Victoria told him about her mother's persistent dinner invitations. He told her about Emma's latest plot to expand the bookstore into literary events, which mostly meant letting kids bring their pets to read to them. Eventually, they had to go back. Victoria needed to make appearances, thank donors, perform her role as CEO who cared deeply about literacy initiatives. But something had shifted. When she worked the room now, Daniel was there, not as an accessory or a performance, but as a person who made the performance bearable. And when important people asked who he was, Victoria's answer changed. Not just Daniel, but Daniel Hart. He runs Hart and Daughter Bookstore, and he's wonderful. The pride in her voice when she said it made Daniel feel 10 feet tall. They left at 11, after Victoria had fulfilled her obligations and Daniel had shaken more hands than he knew existed. In the car back to his apartment, they sat close, her head on his shoulder, both of them exhausted and content. "Emma's going to want a full report," Daniel said. "Tell her it was magical and her father was charming and everyone loved him." "That's a generous interpretation of me standing awkwardly in corners." "You made Richard question his entire business philosophy. That's not awkward, that's revolutionary." The car pulled up outside his building, significantly less impressive than Victoria's, but home nonetheless. "Come in?" Daniel asked. "Emma's asleep, but I can make terrible coffee and we can talk more." Victoria hesitated and Daniel saw the calculation happening, the weighing of risks and implications. "Just coffee," he said gently. "No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who like each other spending more time together." "I'm not good at this," she admitted, "at being spontaneous, at not having a plan." "Then don't plan. Just decide." She decided. Inside his apartment, small and cluttered but warm, Victoria looked around with genuine interest. Photos of Emma on the walls, books stacked everywhere, the comfortable chaos of a life actually being lived. "This is nice," she said. "It feels like home." "It's a mess. It's lived in. There's a difference." Daniel made coffee that was indeed terrible. He'd never mastered the art despite years of trying, and they sat on his worn couch, close but not touching, talking in quiet voices so as not to wake Emma. "Tell me something true," Victoria said suddenly. "Something you don't tell people." Daniel thought about it. "I'm scared all the time. That I'm failing Emma. That the bookstore will close and I'll have nothing left of Sarah. That I'm too broken to ever be good for anyone again." "You're not broken. Neither are you." "Oh, we're both a little broken. Maybe that's okay. Maybe broken people fit together better. All the sharp edges line up." Victoria laughed softly. "That's either very wise or very sad. Can't it be both?" They talked until 1 in the morning, about everything and nothing. About Victoria's mother who called every day and the complicated love that came with that. About Daniel's parents who'd passed years ago and how he still sometimes wanted to call them for advice. About fear and hope and the strange courage it took to let someone see you clearly. Finally, reluctantly, Victoria said she should go. At the door she kissed him again, softer this time, less urgent but no less meaningful. "Thank you," she said, "for tonight, for being you, for not making this harder than it already is." "Same to you." "I'll call you tomorrow?" "I'll answer." She left, and Daniel stood in his doorway watching her car disappear into the city lights. Emma appeared from the hallway, sleepy-eyed and grinning. "You stayed up," Daniel said. "Obviously, I needed to make sure you came home, and that you looked happy. You look happy." "I am happy." "Good. She makes you smile like Mommy used to. That's important." She padded back to bed, and Daniel stood alone in his quiet apartment, heart full of something that felt dangerously like hope. The next morning, he woke to a text from Victoria. "Thank you for last night. You made something unbearable actually bearable." Coffee this week? He typed back, "Name the day." Her response was immediate. All of them? And just like that, Daniel Hart, widower, struggling bookstore owner, father of one brilliant 8-year-old, found himself in something that looked terrifyingly like the beginning of falling in love. It was too fast, too complicated, too many ways it could go wrong. He didn't care. For the first time in 3 years, he was willing to risk his heart again. And that felt like the bravest thing he'd ever done. Coffee every day turned out to be less metaphor and more literal commitment. Monday, Victoria appeared at the bookstore at noon with 2 lattes and a conspiratorial smile, settling into the worn armchair by the poetry section like she'd been doing it for years. Tuesday, Daniel met her at her office building, sleek glass tower that made him feel like he'd wandered onto a movie set, and they ate terrible cafeteria sandwiches while she complained about board meetings, and he told her about the customer who'd tried to return a book she'd borrowed 15 years ago. Wednesday, Emma insisted Victoria come for dinner, which turned into Victoria and Emma making pasta while Daniel was systematically banned from the kitchen for not understanding the creative process. By Thursday, Daniel had stopped questioning whether this was real and started accepting that maybe, impossibly, it was. They were walking through the park after closing, Emma between them, holding both their hands, chattering about the book report she was planning, when Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her entire body tensed. "I need to take this," she said, voice shifting into that professional register Daniel recognized as her armor. "Marcus, what's wrong?" She stepped away, but Daniel could hear fragments. "Slow down. What do you mean Henderson's pulling out? He signed that no, don't do anything yet. I'm coming in." She turned back to them, and Daniel saw the mask fully in place now, the CEO who solved problems instead of the woman who'd laughed at Emma's terrible pasta-making puns 20 minutes ago. "I have to go. Crisis at work. Henderson's backing out of the merger we've been negotiating for 6 months." "Is it bad?" Daniel asked. "It's catastrophic. That deal was supposed to expand our reach into the Asian market. Without it, we're vulnerable to competitors who'll absolutely exploit the gap." She was already texting, fingers flying across the screen. "I'm sorry. I know we were supposed to—" "Go," Daniel said. "Do what you need to do. I'll call you later?" "Whenever you're free." She kissed Emma's forehead, squeezed Daniel's hand, and was gone. Transformation complete. Warrior CEO heading into battle. Emma watched her go with thoughtful eyes. "She gets scared too. Just like you." "What makes you say that?" "The way her voice changes. She gets all hard on the outside when she's scared on the inside. You do that too sometimes." Daniel looked at his 8-year-old daughter, who apparently had a psychology degree he didn't know about. "When do I do that?" "When people ask about mommy, or when the bank calls about the store. You get all smiley and fine, but your eyes get sad." She squeezed his hand. "It's okay to be scared, Daddy. Victoria knows that. That's why you fit." Out of the mouths of babes, Daniel thought, came truths that adults spent years avoiding. Victoria didn't call that night, or the next day. By Saturday, Daniel was trying not to spiral into catastrophic thinking. She'd realized he wasn't worth the complication. She'd gotten consumed by work and forgotten he existed. She'd been a beautiful dream that reality had woken him from. Then, at 7 in the evening, she appeared at the bookstore looking like she'd been through a war and lost. Her suit was wrinkled, her hair was falling out of its bun. She had dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She looked exhausted and beautiful, and like she might break if someone touched her wrong. "Hi," she said. "I know I disappeared. I'm sorry. I couldn't. The merger completely fell apart and we had to scramble to prevent a stock nosedive. And I haven't slept in 48 hours and I probably look terrible and—" Daniel pulled her into a hug. She went rigid for half a second, then collapsed into him like a puppet with cut strings. He felt her shaking, felt the careful control she'd been maintaining finally crack. "I've got you," he said quietly. "Whatever you need, I've got you." They stood there in the middle of the bookstore, Victoria crying silently into his shoulder while Emma watched from behind the counter with solemn understanding. Finally, Victoria pulled back, wiping her eyes with the efficiency of someone practiced at controlling emotional displays. "I'm sorry, that was unprofessional. This isn't your office. You're allowed to be human here." I don't know how to be human anymore. I just know how to be effective. Emma appeared with a box of tissues and Tolstoy, who immediately pressed his head against Victoria's leg with the innate understanding that golden retrievers possessed about human emotional states. "Thank you, sweetheart," Victoria said, accepting the tissues and scratching Tolstoy's ears. "You're very wise for 8. Everyone says that. I think it's because I read a lot and adults aren't used to kids paying attention." Emma studied Victoria with the directness that made grown-ups uncomfortable. "Do you want to talk about it, or do you want to pet Tolstoy and pretend everything's fine for a while?" Victoria laughed, surprised. "Option 2, please." "Good choice. Tolstoy's an excellent pretender. He once pretended to be a dragon for my entire birthday party." They closed the bookstore early. Daniel could afford the lost revenue even less than usual, but some things mattered more than money, and walked to a small Italian place 3 blocks away that Daniel knew from the days when he and Sarah used to pretend they could afford date nights. Over mediocre wine and actually good pasta, Victoria slowly unwound. She told them about the merger, about Henderson's last-minute demands that would have essentially gutted Tech Vista's autonomy, about the board's panic and the competitors circling like sharks. "I made the right call," she said, more to herself than to them. "Walking away was the only option, but it still feels like failure." "It's not failure," Daniel said. "It's boundaries. You refuse to compromise your company's integrity for a deal. That's strength, not weakness." "The board doesn't see it that way. Half of them think I'm being stubborn. The other half think I'm being emotional." Her laugh was bitter. Emotional. Because apparently having standards and refusing exploitation is an emotional response instead of a strategic one. They're wrong. Are they? Maybe I am too emotionally invested. Maybe that's my problem. I can't separate myself from the company enough to make purely rational decisions. Emma, who'd been quietly eating her pasta, spoke up. "My teacher says emotions make you smart, not dumb. She says people who don't feel things make bad choices because they don't understand consequences." Victoria blinked. "Your teacher sounds very wise." "She is. She also says that people who are mean to other people are usually sad inside, and we should feel sorry for them instead of being mad. But I think your board people aren't sad. They're just wrong." "Emma," Daniel warned gently. "What?" "They are. Victoria did the right thing, and they're being mean about it. That's wrong." Victoria reached across the table and squeezed Emma's hand. "Thank you for that, truly. I needed to hear it." They finished dinner and walked back toward the bookstore through streets that were quieting as evening settled. Victoria had relaxed, the rigid control giving way to something softer, more real. "Can I ask you something?" she said as they walked. "And please be honest." "Always. Does it bother you? That my life is chaos? That I disappear for days because of work emergencies? That I'm constantly putting out fires and dealing with crises?" Daniel considered the question carefully. "Does it bother you that I can barely keep my business afloat? That I'm raising a kid alone and half the time I'm not sure I'm doing it right? That my idea of success is making rent this month? That's not the same thing, isn't it? We're both struggling with different things. You're fighting to maintain a company. I'm fighting to maintain a life. Neither one of us has it figured out." They'd reached the bookstore. Emma was already inside, turning on lights and probably reorganizing the children's section for the 40th time. Victoria stopped on the sidewalk, backlit by streetlights, looking uncertain in a way that made Daniel's chest ache. "I'm going to mess this up," she said quietly. "Whatever this is between us. I'm going to get consumed by work and forget to call and cancel plans, and eventually you're going to realize I'm not worth the complication." "Victoria, I have a terrible track record. Relationships, friendships, anything that requires me to be present and available and not constantly distracted. I'm good at business. I'm terrible at people." "You're not terrible at people. You're scared of people. There's a difference." "Is there?" Daniel stepped closer, close enough to see the fear in her eyes, the vulnerability she worked so hard to hide. "You showed up tonight, exhausted and overwhelmed and barely holding it together, and you came here, not to your empty apartment, not to another work crisis, but here, to me. That's not terrible at people. That's brave. It doesn't feel brave. It feels terrifying. The best things usually do." She kissed him then, soft and desperate and full of all the things she couldn't say out loud. When they broke apart, she was crying again. Not the silent, controlled tears from earlier, but real ones, messy and unguarded. I don't know how to do this, she whispered, how to want someone and not destroy it by being myself. Then don't. Be yourself anyway. All the messy, complicated, brilliant parts. And let me decide if I can handle it. What if you can't? What if I can? Emma appeared in the doorway. Are you two going to keep having important conversations on the sidewalk, or are you coming inside? Because Tolstoy and I made hot chocolate, and it's getting cold. They went inside. Drank Emma's hot chocolate, which was approximately 70% marshmallows. Sat together on the old couch in the back room while Emma read aloud from her current favorite book, a story about a girl who tamed dragons by understanding they were just misunderstood. Victoria fell asleep on Daniel's shoulder halfway through chapter 3. He didn't move, didn't want to disturb her, just sat there feeling her breathe and thinking about how strange it was that 3 weeks ago she'd been a stranger who fell on him in a coffee shop, and now she was this person he couldn't imagine not knowing. Emma finished her chapter, looked at them both, and smiled. You should keep her, Daddy. It's not that simple, sweetheart. It is, though. You like her, she likes you, she makes you happy. You make her less scared, that's simple. There are complications. Adult complications. Adults make everything complicated. That's your problem. She stood, stretched, started turning off lights. I'm going to bed. You should probably not wake her up. She looks peaceful and she probably needs it. Emma disappeared upstairs to the small apartment above the bookstore, leaving Daniel alone with a sleeping CEO on his shoulder, and the overwhelming realization that he was absolutely falling in love with her. It was reckless and probably foolish, and almost certainly going to end in heartbreak. Victoria's world was board meetings and billion-dollar deals and expectations he couldn't meet. His world was overdue bills and struggling to survive, and a daughter who needed stability, not the chaos of her father's complicated relationship. But sitting there in the quiet bookstore with Victoria's weight against him and her breath steady and calm, Daniel couldn't bring himself to care about the logical reasons this was a bad idea. Sometimes the heart made decisions the head couldn't justify, and maybe that was okay. Victoria woke an hour later, disoriented and embarrassed. I fell asleep. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. You needed it. When's the last time you actually slept? She thought about it. Tuesday? Maybe Monday. It's all blurring together. Come on. Daniel stood, offered his hand. I'm putting you in a cab. You're going home and sleeping for 12 hours. I have a board meeting tomorrow at 8. Then you're sleeping for 10 hours and showing up late. The company won't collapse without you for one morning. You don't understand. If I show weakness now after the Henderson disaster, they'll use it against me. The board's looking for any excuse to question my leadership. Then give them a leader who's rested and sharp instead of exhausted and making decisions from a place of panic. He pulled out his phone, called a car service. Victoria, I've watched you run yourself into the ground this week. That's not strength. That's fear. She stared at him, something shifting behind her eyes. You're right. I hate that you're right, but you are. I'm occasionally insightful, usually by accident. The car arrived. Daniel walked her out, held the door open. Thank you, Victoria said, for tonight, for letting me fall apart without judgment. Everyone needs a safe place to fall apart. I'm glad I could be that for you. You're more than that. She stopped, searching for words. You're the first person in years who sees me as a person instead of a position. That's rare and precious, and I don't want to lose it. You won't, not unless you run away from it. I'm good at running. I've noticed, but you keep coming back. That counts for something. She kissed him once more, gentle and lingering, then got in the car. Daniel watched until the taillights disappeared, then went back inside to lock up. Emma was sitting on the stairs in her pajamas, definitely not asleep like she was supposed to be. You love her, she said. Not a question, a statement. It's complicated. No, it's not. You love her. She loves you. The only complicated part is both of you being scared about it. When did you become the relationship expert? When both my parents decided to make everything harder than it needs to be. She stood, hugged him tight. Mommy would like her. I know she would. She'd want you to be happy. Daniel's throat tightened. How do you know? Because Mommy loved you. And people who love you want you to be happy, even when they can't be there. That's what love is. She went to bed for real this time, leaving Daniel standing in the dark bookstore with tears on his face and his daughter's wisdom ringing in his ears. Sarah would have liked Victoria, would have appreciated her sharp intelligence, her hidden vulnerability, the way she tried so hard to be strong while secretly being terrified, would have probably told Daniel he was an idiot for overthinking it. He could almost hear her voice. Stop being precious about this. Life's too short. If you love her, tell her. What's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen was heartbreak. Again. More loss. More pain. But the alternative was shutting down, closing off, living half a life because he was too afraid to risk a whole one. Daniel Hart had been playing it safe for 3 years. Being careful, protecting himself and Emma from any more hurt. And he was tired of it. Sunday morning, he texted Victoria, "How'd you sleep?" Her response came an hour later. Like the dead, 12 hours. I feel almost human. Thank you for forcing me. Anytime. Want to come over for lunch? Emma's threatening to make her famous grilled cheese, which is regular grilled cheese but with architectural ambitions. I would love nothing more. She arrived at noon with flowers for Emma, daisies, bright and cheerful, and a bottle of wine for Daniel that probably cost more than his weekly grocery budget. Emma's grilled cheese turned out to be a structural marvel involving 4 different cheeses, tomatoes, and what she claimed was architectural integrity, but looked suspiciously like creative chaos. They ate on the small balcony off the apartment, sun warm despite the autumn chill, city sounds a comfortable backdrop. I talked to the board this morning, Victoria said, picking at her sandwich. Told them we're pivoting strategy. Instead of chasing mergers that compromise our values, we're investing in organic growth and new technology that aligns with our original mission. How'd they take it? Half of them think I'm brilliant. The other half think I'm delusional. Par for the course. She smiled, but it was strained. I also told them that if they can't support my leadership, they're welcome to find a new CEO. Daniel nearly choked on his wine. You said that? I did. Probably career suicide, but I'm tired of being second-guessed by people who care more about quarterly returns than building something meaningful. That's incredibly brave. That's incredibly terrifying. I might have just tanked my own company. She laughed, slightly unhinged. But I was standing there in the boardroom thinking about what you said, about boundaries being strength, not weakness, and I just couldn't keep performing anymore. Couldn't keep pretending I cared about their approval more than my own integrity. Emma, who'd been listening with rapt attention, spoke up. What happened? They stared at me for approximately 30 seconds, longest 30 seconds of my life. And then Patricia Wu, who's been on the board since we went public, started clapping, just slow clapping like I'd given a speech in a movie, and then everyone else joined in because nobody wants to be the one not clapping. So you won? Emma asked. I have no idea. But I didn't back down, and that feels like winning even if it isn't. Victoria looked at Daniel with something fierce and grateful in her eyes. You did that. You made me believe I could. You did that. I just provided the audience. They spent the afternoon doing absolutely nothing important. Emma taught Victoria a complicated card game that had rules Emma definitely made up as she went along. Tolstoy performed his entire repertoire of tricks for treats. They talked about everything except work and stress and all the ways the world was complicated. As evening approached, Emma announced she was going to Mrs. Chen's apartment downstairs for a movie night, a plan that was suspiciously convenient and definitely premeditated. Have fun, Emma said, hugging them both with the smugness of a successful matchmaker. Don't wait up. She left with Tolstoy, and suddenly Daniel and Victoria were alone in the quiet apartment. Your daughter is not subtle, Victoria said. She's 8 and thinks she's Cupid. Subtlety isn't her strength. They migrated to the couch, that same comfortable spot where Victoria had fallen asleep on Daniel's shoulder. But this time there was an awareness between them, an electric tension that came from knowing they were alone and time was infinite and nothing was stopping them from being honest. Can I tell you something? Victoria said. Something I haven't told anyone? Always. I'm lonely. Not just alone. I'm used to alone. but lonely in a way that feels like drowning. I go home to my expensive apartment and sit in the silence and wonder what the point of all this success is if I don't have anyone to share it with. Her voice cracked. And then I met you, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to be seen. Not as a CEO or a success story, but as a person who's scared and trying and desperately hoping she's enough. Daniel took her hand, laced their fingers together. You're more than enough. You're extraordinary. I'm a mess who hasn't figured out how to balance anything. Work consumes me. I cancel plans, disappear for days, prioritize deadlines over relationships. That's not extraordinary. That's broken. Then we're both broken, and we can figure it out together. What if I can't give you what you need? What if I'm too damaged, too consumed by work, too... He kissed her. It was different from before. Not desperate or questioning, but certain. A declaration instead of a question. When they broke apart, Victoria was crying again, but this time she was smiling too. I'm falling in love with you, Daniel said, because if he was going to be terrified, he might as well be honest about it. It's too fast and probably too complicated, and I have no idea how we make this work with our completely different lives. But I'm falling in love with you anyway, and I thought you should know. Victoria's breath caught. Daniel, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know that I'm in this. Whatever this is. I'm not running. She kissed him again, softer this time, reverent. I'm falling in love with you too. And it terrifies me because I'm going to mess this up. I'm going to disappoint you and cancel on you and probably drive you crazy with my work obsession. Probably. And I'm going to bore you with my small life and worry you with my failing business and definitely annoy you with my complete inability to make decent coffee. We're a disaster. We're two disasters who somehow make sense together. They sat there on the couch, holding each other like they were both lifelines and safety nets, two people who'd been alone so long they'd forgotten what it felt like to be chosen. Victoria's phone buzzed. Then again. Then started ringing insistently. She looked at it, looked at Daniel, made a decision. She turned the phone off. It can wait, she said. Whatever it is, it can wait. Right now, I'm exactly where I need to be. They talked until midnight, about fears and hopes and all the ways they were terrified of wanting something this much, about Sarah and what she'd meant to Daniel, about Victoria's failed engagement and the walls she'd built, about Emma and how to navigate bringing someone new into her life permanently, about the bookstore in Tech Vista and how two such different worlds could possibly coexist. There were no easy answers, no guarantees that this would work. But sometime around 1 a.m, with Victoria's head on Daniel's chest and his arms around her, both of them acknowledged the truth they'd been dancing around. They were falling in love. And despite all the logical reasons it was a terrible idea, despite all the complications and differences and very real obstacles, neither of them wanted to stop. Stay, Daniel said quietly. Not forever. Just tonight. Let me hold you while you sleep without your phone going off every 5 minutes. I don't have anything to sleep in. I'll give you a shirt. It'll be too big and you'll look ridiculous, and I'll probably fall even more in love with you. She laughed, exhausted and happy. Okay, yes, I'll stay. He gave her one of his oldest, softest t-shirts from a bookstore conference in 2019 that he and Sarah had gone to together. Victoria emerged from the bathroom looking nothing like a CEO and everything like someone precious and real. They fell asleep tangled together, two broken people finding wholeness in each other's arms. And for the first time in 3 years, Daniel Hart slept through the night without nightmares of loss. He woke instead to possibility, and that felt like everything. Morning came with pale sunlight filtering through the curtains and the sound of Emma's voice from the kitchen, quietly fierce and protective. I don't care who you are or what you want. Victoria's sleeping and Daddy's sleeping, and you need to come back later or never. Daniel opened his eyes to find Victoria already awake beside him, eyes wide with alarm at whatever was happening in the next room. That's Emma, he said, unnecessarily, already getting up. And she sounds like she's either protecting us from a burglar or your assistant. Oh God, Marcus. Victoria scrambled out of bed, still wearing Daniel's too large t-shirt, hair a mess. I turned my phone off. He probably thought I was dead. They emerged from the bedroom to find Emma standing in the doorway, arms crossed, blocking Marcus from entering. The assistant looked harried and relieved in equal measure, holding 2 coffee cups and a tablet that was probably full of urgent matters. Victoria, thank God. I've been calling for hours. The Japan team needs approval on the... He stopped, taking in Victoria's appearance, Daniel's rumpled state, Emma's protective stance. Understanding dawned across his face. Oh, you were... I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to... It's fine, Marcus. Victoria ran a hand through her hair, trying for dignity despite the circumstances. What's the emergency? The Japan team needs sign-off on the revised proposal. Chen's threatening to walk if we don't counter his offer by noon, and your mother called the office because you weren't answering your cell. She sounded worried, and possibly homicidal. Victoria closed her eyes. What time is it? 9:30. You've missed 2 calls already. I'll be there in an hour. Victoria, the Chen situation. I'll handle it remotely. Give me 30 minutes to get home and changed, then patch me in for a video call. She turned to Daniel, apologetic. I'm sorry, I have to go, Daniel said. I understand. But something in her face crumpled just for a second before the CEO mask snapped back into place. I don't want to. That's the problem. For the first time in my entire career, I don't want to go solve the crisis. I want to stay here and have breakfast and pretend the world can wait. Emma, who'd been watching this exchange with interest, spoke up. Why can't you do both? Because, sweetheart, sometimes work has to come first. No, I mean, why can't you do the video call from here? We have internet. Daddy has a laptop. You could change into your fancy clothes, do your meeting, and then have breakfast after. That's both. Marcus and Victoria exchanged looks. Then Victoria started laughing, slightly hysterical. She's 8, and she just solved my work-life balance problem better than any efficiency consultant I've hired. To be fair, Marcus said, she's not wrong. If you just need to be on video for the Chen negotiation, location doesn't matter. I can send you the files, you can take the call, and then actually eat something before your blood sugar drops so low you agree to terrible terms. Victoria looked at Daniel. Would that be okay? I know it's imposing. Stay, he said simply. Use whatever you need. Emma's right. There's no rule that says crisis management can't happen from a kitchen table. 20 minutes later, Victoria had transformed. She'd borrowed Daniel's bedroom, changed back into yesterday's suit that Marcus had thoughtfully brought with the coffee, and done something with her hair that made her look polished and powerful instead of like she'd spent the night in her boyfriend's arms. Boyfriend. Daniel tested the word mentally, wondering if that's what they were now. She sat up at the small kitchen table, laptop open, files arranged with military precision. Marcus sat beside her with his tablet, feeding her information in whispers. Emma and Daniel retreated to the living room, trying to give her space while still being present. The video call started exactly at 10. Daniel watched Victoria shift completely into her professional persona. Voice authoritative, posture perfect, every word chosen with strategic precision. She negotiated with Chen, a venture capitalist who apparently thought he could bully her into accepting unfavorable terms, with the kind of steel-wrapped-in-silk approach that made it clear why she'd built an empire. I appreciate your position, Mr. Chen, she said, voice pleasant and absolutely unyielding. But Tech Vista isn't in the business of accepting deals that compromise our long-term vision for short-term capital. If you can't meet us at fair terms, I'm confident we'll find partners who value mutual benefit over exploitation. Chen blustered. Victoria smiled, unmoved. I'll give you until tomorrow at noon to reconsider. After that, we're moving forward with our other options. I hope you'll choose to be part of our success, but we'll be successful regardless. She ended the call with gracious professionalism, then immediately sagged in her chair. He's going to cave, Marcus said confidently. Nobody outplays Victoria Lane at negotiation chicken. He might not. We might have just lost a major investor. Then we'll find another one. A better one. You were magnificent. Victoria glanced toward the living room where Daniel and Emma were pretending not to eavesdrop. I was terrifying. That's different from magnificent. That's what power looks like. Own it. Marcus left with promises to handle the Japan approval and call her mother with proof of life. The apartment fell quiet except for Emma's humming as she read and Tolstoy's gentle snoring from his spot by the window. Victoria came to sit beside Daniel on the couch, still in her power suit, but looking exhausted. "That's my life," she said quietly. "Crisis to crisis, negotiation to negotiation. Every single day something's on fire and I'm the only one who can put it out. You're good at it. I'm tired of it." She leaned against him, and Daniel felt the weight of her confession. "I used to love this. The challenge, the strategy, the winning. Now it just feels like I'm running on a treadmill that never stops, and I can't remember why I got on it in the first place." Emma looked up from her book. "So get off." "It's not that simple. Grown-ups always say that, but it is that simple. If you don't like something, stop doing it. Do something else. I have 4,000 employees depending on me. Investors, board members, shareholders. I can't just walk away because I'm tired." "I didn't say walk away. I said do something else." Emma closed her book, came to sit with them. Daddy was sad after Mommy died. Really sad. And the bookstore was doing bad and everything was hard. Mrs. Chen told him he should sell it and get a normal job. Everyone said that. But Daddy said the bookstore wasn't just a job. It was a family. And family doesn't quit just because things are hard. Daniel's throat tightened. He'd forgotten Emma had overheard that conversation. "Your company is like that, right?" Emma continued. "It's not just money, it's what you built. So don't quit. Just change it so it makes you happy instead of sad." Victoria stared at this 8-year-old who kept delivering wisdom like fortune cookies full of uncomfortable truths. "How did you get so smart?" Victoria asked. "Books, mostly, and watching Daddy try really hard even when things are bad. And Mommy used to say that being brave isn't about not being scared, it's about doing the right thing even when you are scared." "Your mom was right. She usually was. Daddy says that's why he married her." They spent the rest of the morning doing wonderfully normal things. Victoria changed back into Daniel's shirt. She'd started calling it her shirt, and he didn't correct her because he liked the possessiveness of it. They made pancakes with Emma directing and Victoria following instructions with the same intensity she brought to business negotiations. Tolstoy got more pancake bites than was probably healthy. The kitchen became a disaster zone of flour and laughter. Around noon, Victoria's phone rang. Not the work phone, her personal one. She looked at the screen and made a sound somewhere between resignation and dread. "It's my mother. She's called Marcus. She knows I'm alive, and she's absolutely not going to stop until I answer." "Then answer," Daniel said. Victoria took a deep breath and picked up. "Hi, Mom." Patricia Lane's voice carried clearly even without speakerphone. "Victoria Ann Lane, I have been worried sick. You don't answer your phone for 12 hours, your assistant won't tell me where you are, and I had to threaten to call the police before he confirmed you were breathing." "I'm sorry. I turned my phone off and forgot to turn it back on." "You never turn your phone off. What's going on?" Victoria looked at Daniel, something vulnerable and terrified in her expression. Then she made a decision. "I'm at my boyfriend's apartment. I stayed over last night. I'm sorry I worried you." Silence. Then, "Boyfriend. You have a boyfriend. Since when do you have a boyfriend?" "Since a few weeks ago. It's new and good, and I didn't tell you because I knew you'd make a big deal about it." "Of course I'm making a big deal about it. You haven't dated anyone seriously since Robert, and that was a decade ago. This is huge. What's his name? What does he do? How did you meet?" Victoria put the phone on speaker, looking at Daniel for permission. He nodded, heart hammering. "His name is Daniel Hart. He owns a bookstore. We met when I fell on him in a coffee shop." "You fell on him." "It's a long story. The point is, he's wonderful and kind and has an 8-year-old daughter who's currently covered in pancake batter and judging both of us for being emotionally repressed." Emma waved at the phone. "Hi, Victoria's mom. I'm Emma. Your daughter is really pretty and also really good at negotiating, but needs to learn to relax more." Patricia laughed, delighted. "I like this child. Daniel, are you there?" "Yes, ma'am," Daniel managed, feeling like he was 16 again and meeting a girlfriend's parents for the first time. "Are you good to my daughter?" "I'm trying to be." "Are you patient with her when work consumes her and she forgets the rest of the world exists?" "I understand that her work matters. I'm learning to navigate it." "Do you love her?" Victoria made a strangled sound. "Mom, you can't just—" "Hush, I'm talking to Daniel. Do you love her?" Daniel looked at Victoria. Brilliant, terrified, powerful, vulnerable Victoria, who'd stayed the night and worn his shirt and let Emma teach her about pancakes. "Yes," he said. "I do." "Good. Victoria, bring him to dinner. Sunday, 6 o'clock. I'm making lasagna and I want to meet this man who got you to turn your phone off." "Mom, 6 o'clock. Don't be late. And Daniel, thank you for taking care of my daughter. She needs it more than she admits." Patricia hung up, leaving them in stunned silence. Emma broke it. "That was amazing. Your mom is scary and awesome." "That's an accurate summary of Patricia Lane," Victoria said weakly. "I can't believe you just were having dinner with my mother on Sunday." "Is that a problem?" Daniel asked. "No, yes, maybe. She's going to interrogate you like you're applying for a security clearance, and she'll have opinions about everything, and she'll probably tell embarrassing stories about me as a child. I look forward to all of that." Victoria looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "You're not nervous?" "I'm terrified, but she's your mother and she matters to you, so I want to meet her properly. Not as some casual thing you're hiding, but as someone who's in your life. We've known each other 3 weeks, and I love you anyway. Time doesn't change that." Emma made a sound of pure satisfaction. "I knew it. I knew you loved each other. You both have the same scared, happy face Mommy and Daddy used to have when they thought I wasn't watching." The afternoon dissolved into comfortable domesticity. Victoria worked from the kitchen table, handling emails and approvals, while Daniel managed inventory and Emma did homework. They existed in the same space doing different things, and it felt natural in a way that surprised all of them. Around 4, Victoria's phone rang again. Marcus, with news. "Chen caved. He's accepting our terms. Wants to sign by end of week." Victoria closed her eyes, relief washing over her. "Knew he would. He was posturing." "You played him perfectly." The board's thrilled. "They want to schedule a press conference announcing the partnership." "Tell them next week. I'm taking the rest of today off." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, did you just say you're taking time off?" "Voluntarily. Are you feeling okay?" "I'm feeling like work isn't the only thing that matters. Schedule the press conference for Wednesday. I'll be available tomorrow for prep." Victoria. "Marcus, I've worked 80-hour weeks for 15 years. I'm taking one afternoon. The company will survive." She hung up and found both Daniel and Emma staring at her. "What?" she asked. "You just chose us over work," Emma said, wonder in her voice. "I chose myself over work. You two just happen to benefit from that decision." But she was smiling, and Daniel saw what it cost her: the guilt, the anxiety, the voice in her head screaming that she was being irresponsible. He also saw her push through it anyway, choosing presence over productivity. They ordered pizza for dinner. Terrible, greasy, perfect pizza from the place down the street that Daniel had been going to for years. Ate it on the living room floor while Emma explained the intricate plot of her favorite book series, and Tolstoy begged shamelessly for crusts. "This is my favorite day in a long time," Emma announced around a mouthful of pepperoni. "We should do this every week. Pizza and Victoria, and nobody being sad or worried." "I'm not sure Victoria can take every Sunday off," Daniel said gently. "Not every Sunday, but some Sundays. Because family is important and you're family now, Victoria, right?" Victoria's eyes went bright. She looked at Daniel, questioning, hoping. "If you want to be," he said softly. "I want to be," Victoria whispered. "More than I've wanted anything in a very long time." Emma launched herself at Victoria, hugging her with the full-body enthusiasm of children who haven't learned to hide their feelings. Victoria hugged back, and Daniel watched 2 of the people he loved most figure out how to love each other. Later, after Emma had gone to bed and they were alone again, Victoria and Daniel sat on the balcony despite the cold, wrapped in blankets and each other. "I'm scared," Victoria admitted. "This is moving fast and I don't know how to do it right, and I'm going to disappoint you when work pulls me away again." "Then disappoint me. I'd rather have you imperfectly than not have you at all." "What if it's not enough? What if you need more than I can give? What if what you can give is exactly what I need?" She was quiet for a long moment, city lights spread before them like scattered stars. "I want to tell you something," she said finally, "about why I'm like this, why I'm so consumed by work, why I can't seem to separate myself from the company. You don't have to. I want to. She took a breath. When I was 26 and building my first startup, I was broke and desperate and living on ramen and coffee. My father had just died. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. He'd spent his whole life working for other people, playing it safe, never taking risks. He died with regrets. Daniel waited, letting her tell it at her own pace. At his funeral, people talked about what a good employee he'd been. Reliable, steady. And I remember thinking, is that it? Is that all a life amounts to? Being reliable for a company that replaced him within a week? Victoria's voice was raw. So I decided I wouldn't live like that. I'd take risks, build something that mattered, make enough money that I'd never feel powerless or trapped. I'd be someone whose legacy was more than reliability. And you succeeded. I did. But somewhere along the way, I became the thing I was trying to escape. I work all the time. I have no life outside the office. And I'm so afraid of losing what I built that I can't let go of control for even a minute. She turned to look at him. Until you and Emma showed me that maybe success isn't measured in net worth and employee count. Maybe it's measured in moments like this: pizza on the floor, pancakes for breakfast, someone who sees you clearly and loves you anyway. Daniel pulled her closer. Your father would be proud of you, not because of the money or the company, but because you built something from nothing. You took risks. You didn't play it safe. I've played it safe with my heart. That's worse than any business risk. Then stop. Be reckless with me. She kissed him, cold air and warm lips and the taste of possibility. I love you, she said against his mouth. I'm terrible at showing it, and I'll probably mess this up 100 times, but I love you. You and Emma both. We love you too. Mess-ups included. They stayed on the balcony until the cold drove them inside, then fell into bed together, talking in whispers about the future they were building. Victoria told him about wanting to restructure Tech Vista, maybe step back from day-to-day operations and focus on strategy. Daniel admitted the bookstore was failing faster than he'd let on, that he might have 3 months left before he had to close. What if I helped? Victoria asked. Not with money, I know you'd hate that, but with strategy, marketing. I know business, Daniel. Let me use that to help save something you love. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. Because the bookstore matters to you and Emma, which means it matters to me. We'd be mixing our lives even more, crossing more boundaries. Good. I want our lives mixed. I want boundaries crossed. I want to be so tangled up in you and Emma that I can't remember what it was like before. Daniel kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Then let's get tangled. They made love slowly, carefully, like they were learning a new language together. Afterward, Victoria traced patterns on Daniel's chest, fingers mapping the geography of his body. Tell me about Sarah, she said quietly. Really tell me. Not the sanitized version, the real thing. So he did. He told her about their first date, how Sarah had talked through the entire movie, and he'd fallen in love with her running commentary. About their wedding, small and perfect in the bookstore, surrounded by people who loved them. About Emma's birth, how Sarah had been fierce and funny, even in labor. About the last good day, before the heart attack that came without warning and took her in minutes. I was angry at her for a long time, Daniel admitted. Which is irrational because she didn't choose to leave, but I was angry anyway. Angry that she left me alone with a 5-year-old and a failing business and no idea how to do any of it without her. That's not irrational. That's grief. I know that now, but for the first year I was just so angry. At her, at the universe, at every happy couple I saw who got to stay together when we didn't. He turned to look at Victoria. I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful I had her at all. And I'm grateful I found you. Even though I'm nothing like her? Especially because you're nothing like her. Sarah was sunshine and spontaneity and chaos. Your moonlight and strategy and controlled intensity. I loved her completely. And I love you completely. They're different loves for different people, and that's okay. Victoria was crying silently, and Daniel wiped away her tears. Thank you, she whispered, for letting me be different, for not needing me to replace her. I don't want you to replace her. I want you to be exactly who you are. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two people who'd been alone so long that together felt like coming home. The week that followed was a careful dance of integration. Victoria came to the bookstore after work, helped with inventory while Emma did homework. Daniel met her for lunch when he could, learning to navigate her world of assistants and schedules and constant interruptions. They texted throughout the day, little messages that had nothing to do with anything important and everything to do with maintaining connection. Emma took to calling Victoria V with the casual ownership of someone who'd decided they were keeping her. Victoria, who'd never been around children much, learned to decode 8-year-old logic and developed opinions about age-appropriate books and proper hot chocolate marshmallow ratios. Friday evening, Victoria showed up at the bookstore with her laptop and a determined expression. "Okay," she said, settling at Daniel's desk. "Show me your books. The financial ones, not the ones you sell. I want to see exactly what we're working with." "Victoria, you don't have to. I want to. Please. Let me help." Daniel pulled out the records he'd been avoiding looking at too closely. Victoria studied them with the same intensity she brought to everything, making notes, asking questions, occasionally making sounds that ranged from thoughtful to concerned. After an hour, she looked up. "It's not as bad as you think. I'm 3 months from bankruptcy. That's pretty bad." "You're 3 months from bankruptcy because you're terrible at marketing and your online presence is non-existent and you're underpricing your rare books by at least 30%. She started typing rapidly. "We can fix this. Social media strategy, proper pricing structure, maybe some literary events to drive foot traffic, partner with local schools for reading programs, create a loyalty system. This isn't unfixable, Daniel. It's just been neglected. I don't have money for marketing. You have me. I have a marketing team who'd kill for a project like this. Consider it their community service." "I can't let you." She looked up, eyes fierce. "I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you I'm going to help save your bookstore because I love you, and because Emma's name is on that sign, and because some things are worth fighting for even when they don't make financial sense." Emma, listening from her reading corner, pumped her fist in victory. "I told you she was a keeper, Daddy." Daniel laughed, surrendering. "Okay, yes, please help save my failing business with your terrifying competence." That's the spirit. They spent the rest of the evening planning. Victoria drafted a social media strategy that made Daniel's head spin. Emma contributed ideas that ranged from brilliant to completely absurd. Tolstoy supervised by sleeping on everyone's feet. By 9 o'clock, they had the skeleton of a plan. And for the first time in months, Daniel felt something that wasn't dread when he thought about the bookstore's future. He felt hope. Saturday morning, Victoria's marketing team descended on the bookstore like a well-organized invasion force. They photographed everything, interviewed Emma about her favorite books, got Tolstoy to pose with reading recommendations. Marcus showed up with coffee and pastries and immediately started reorganizing the front window display with an artist's eye. "This is insane," Daniel said, watching his quiet bookstore transform into a hive of purposeful activity. "This is what happens when Victoria Lane decides something matters," Marcus replied. "She doesn't do anything halfway. When she commits absolutely." By Sunday, they had a complete social media presence, professional photos, a pricing structure that made actual business sense, and Emma's face as the bookstore's official junior book expert on Instagram. The account gained 300 followers in the first hour. "How is this happening?" Daniel asked, stunned. "Victoria has 1 million followers on her personal account," Marcus explained. "She posted about your bookstore. Her network is very responsive." Daniel found the post on Victoria's Instagram, a photo of him and Emma in the bookstore, both smiling, surrounded by books. The caption read, "Found something more valuable than any business deal. A family that reminds me what success actually means. Support small businesses. Support local bookstores. Support Heart and Daughter, where love lives on every shelf." The comments were full of people promising to visit, asking for online ordering options, sharing their own small bookstore stories. Daniel felt his throat tighten. She didn't have to do this. She wanted to. That's different. That evening was dinner at Patricia Lane's brownstone in Brooklyn. Daniel wore his one good suit, not the tux, which had been returned, but the navy suit he saved for occasions that required looking respectable. Emma wore her favorite dress and her most serious expression. "Daddy, What if she doesn't like us? Emma asked on the subway ride over. Then she doesn't like us. But Victoria loves us, and that's what matters. But what if her mom says she shouldn't date you because you're not rich or important? Then Victoria gets to decide if her mother's opinion matters more than her own heart. Patricia Lane's brownstone was beautiful in the way old New York money was beautiful, elegant without being showy, full of history and stories. She answered the door herself, a tall woman with Victoria's eyes and a smile that was warm and assessing in equal measure. You must be Daniel, and this beautiful child must be Emma. She crouched down to Emma's level. I've heard wonderful things about you. Victoria tells me you're quite the literary expert. I read a lot, Emma said seriously, and I'm good at knowing which books make people feel better when they're sad. That's a valuable skill. Come in, both of you. Dinner's almost ready. The house smelled like tomatoes and garlic and home. Patricia led them through to a dining room that managed to be both formal and comfortable, set for four with mismatched plates that somehow worked together perfectly. Victoria emerged from the kitchen wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than Daniel had ever seen her. She hugged Emma, kissed Daniel, and there was something so natural about it that Patricia smiled. They sat down to lasagna that was possibly the best thing Daniel had ever eaten. Patricia asked questions, not the invasive kind, but genuine interest questions about the bookstore, about Emma's school, about how they'd met. So my daughter fell on you, Patricia said, delighted. That's very Victoria, efficient even in romance. Mom, Victoria warned. Victoria sat. What? It's true. You've never done anything halfway in your life. Why should falling in love be different? Emma giggled. Victoria blushed. Daniel tried not to look too pleased about all of it. Over dessert, tiramisu that was somehow even better than the lasagna, Patricia turned serious. Daniel, can I be direct with you? Please. My daughter is extraordinary. She's also terrible at taking care of herself. She works too much, cares too much, and has spent the last decade convincing herself that success is measured in accomplishments instead of happiness. Mom, I'm not finished. Victoria needs someone who sees past all that armor to the person underneath. Someone who won't be intimidated by her success or threatened by her drive. Someone who will remind her that life exists outside boardrooms and quarterly earnings. Patricia looked directly at Daniel. Are you that person? I'm trying to be. That's an honest answer. I appreciate honesty. She turned to Victoria. And you, my brilliant, stubborn daughter. Are you going to let yourself be loved, or are you going to sabotage this the way you sabotage everything that requires vulnerability? I'm working on it, Victoria said quietly. Work faster. This man looks at you like you hung the moon, and this child thinks you're magic. Don't throw that away because you're scared. Emma, who'd been listening with rapt attention, spoke up. She won't. She promised. And Victoria doesn't break promises. Smart child, Patricia said approvingly. They stayed until almost 10, talking and laughing and slowly becoming what felt like family. Patricia told stories about Victoria as a child, brilliant and bossy even then, organizing her stuffed animals into corporate hierarchies. Victoria told stories about her father, keeping his memory alive through laughter instead of grief. When they finally left, Patricia hugged them all hard. Come back next Sunday, she said. I'm making pot roast. And Victoria, bring your laptop. We're updating my website for the foundation, and you're the only one who understands this social media nonsense. In the car service Victoria had called, Emma fell asleep between them, head on Victoria's shoulder. Your mother is wonderful, Daniel said quietly. She is. And terrifying, and she likes you, which is basically her stamp of approval. Does that matter to you? More than I want to admit. Victoria laced her fingers through his. Thank you for tonight, for being patient with my family chaos. Your family chaos is nothing compared to mine. Emma once tried to inventory the entire bookstore using a system only she understood. We're still finding her labels. They laughed quietly, careful not to wake Emma. Back at Daniel's apartment, Victoria helped carry Emma to bed. They tucked her in together, a routine that was becoming familiar, comfortable, natural. In the living room afterward, Daniel pulled Victoria close. I love you, he said, in case you were wondering. I wasn't wondering, but I like hearing it anyway. Good, because I plan on saying it frequently, possibly annoyingly frequently. I'll risk it. They stood there in the quiet apartment, holding each other, two people who'd been alone so long that together still felt like a gift they were afraid to unwrap too quickly. But they were unwrapping it anyway, and that made all the difference. 3 months later, on a Tuesday morning that started like any other, Daniel Hart stood in his bookstore and realized something had fundamentally changed. The place was full. Not just a few regulars scattered among the shelves, but actually full. Teenagers clustered in the young adult section, a book club occupying the reading corner, parents browsing picture books while their kids sat cross-legged listening to Emma read aloud. The register had rung more times before noon than it used to in entire weeks. Victoria's marketing strategy had worked. Better than worked. It had transformed the bookstore from a dying relic into what the local news had called Brooklyn's hidden literary gem. The Instagram account Emma co-managed had 20,000 followers. They'd started hosting author events, poetry slams, children's story hours. The rare book section that Daniel had been underpricing was now properly valued and attracting serious collectors. For the first time in 3 years, Hart and Daughter was turning a profit. Daniel should have been elated. Instead, he felt a growing knot of anxiety that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the fact that he was about to ask Victoria Lane a question that terrified him. Emma noticed immediately because Emma noticed everything. "You're doing the worried face," she said, appearing at his elbow with Tolstoy in tow. "The one where your eyebrows scrunch up and you look like you're solving a really hard math problem." "I'm fine." "You're lying. You're bad at lying. That's why you never let me have ice cream for breakfast, even when I come up with excellent arguments." Despite himself, Daniel smiled. "What excellent arguments?" "Ice cream is made from milk. Milk is breakfast food. Therefore, ice cream is breakfast food. It's basic logic." "That's not how nutrition works." "That's not how anything works, but I tried." She studied him seriously. "You're thinking about Victoria, and you're scared about something. When did you become a mind reader?" "I'm not reading your mind. I'm reading your face. It's the same face you had before you kissed her the first time, scared, excited, like you want something really bad but you're afraid it won't work out." Daniel crouched down to her level. "Can I tell you a secret?" "Always." "I'm going to ask Victoria to move in with us, and I'm terrified she'll say no." Emma's eyes went huge. "That's not scary, that's amazing. She practically lives here anyway. Half her clothes are in your closet, and she has a toothbrush in the bathroom, and Tolstoy thinks she's part of the pack. It's basically already happened." "That's different from officially asking. What if she's not ready? What if moving in together is too fast and I scare her away?" "Daddy?" Emma put her small hands on his face, forcing him to look at her. "Victoria loves you, like really loves you. The kind where her whole face lights up when you text her, and she laughs at your terrible jokes that aren't even funny. She's not going anywhere." "You sound very certain." "I am very certain, because last week when we were making cookies and you were at the bank, she told me that loving us was the best decision she ever made, better than any business deal or company she built." Those were her actual words. Daniel's throat tightened. "She said that?" "She did. And then she cried a little bit, but happy crying, not sad crying. And then we ate cookie dough and agreed not to tell you because you're weird about raw eggs." He pulled Emma into a hug, this brilliant, perceptive child who'd somehow navigated grief and change with more grace than he'd managed. "What would I do without you?" he asked. "Probably make a lot of mistakes and have terrible fashion choices. You're welcome for fixing both of those things." The bell above the door chimed, and Daniel looked up to see Victoria entering with her usual purposeful stride, but there was something different about her today. She was smiling, not the professional smile she deployed in meetings, but something genuine and bright that made her look years younger. "I have news," she announced, then noticed the crowd in the bookstore. "Wow, this place is actually packed. Daniel, this is incredible. Your strategy worked." "Our strategy worked. I just organized it. You're the one who made it matter." She wove through the customers to reach him, kissed him hello with the casual intimacy of 3 months together. "Can we talk? Somewhere private?" They retreated to the small office in the back, Emma tactfully staying out front to manage the register with the competence of someone who'd been doing it since she was tall enough to see over the counter. Victoria was practically vibrating with energy. "I did something. And I probably should have consulted you first, but I didn't because I was afraid you'd talk me out of it. and now it's done and I need to tell you. That's a concerning preamble. I restructured Tech Vista, promoted my COO to CEO, moved myself to chairman of the board. I'm keeping strategic oversight but stepping back from daily operations. Daniel blinked. You what? I've been miserable running the company day to day. The constant crises, the endless meetings, the politics and posturing, it was killing me. But I couldn't see a way out until you and Emma showed me that success doesn't have to mean sacrificing everything else. She was talking fast, nervous. So I restructured. My COO is brilliant, more than capable of running things. I'll stay involved in strategy and major decisions, but I'm done with the 80-hour weeks and the constant fires. Victoria, I don't know what to say. That's a huge change. It's the right change. I should have done it years ago. She took his hands. I want a life, Daniel, not just a career. I want time with you and Emma. I want to actually show up for dinners with my mother instead of canceling at the last minute. I want to read books for pleasure instead of market reports. I want to be present. Are you sure? You built that company from nothing. Stepping back from running it isn't stepping away from it. I'm still on the board, still guiding strategy. I'm just not drowning in operational details anymore. Her voice softened. I'm choosing us. You, me, Emma. I'm choosing the life we're building over the one I was trapped in. Daniel pulled her close, overwhelmed by the enormity of what she'd done. I love you. You know that, right? I know. I love you too, so much that it still scares me sometimes. Good, because I have something to ask you, and I'm terrified you'll think it's too soon or too much or… Daniel, ask. He took a breath. Move in with us. Officially. Not just leaving clothes here and staying over most nights, but actually move in. Make this your home. Be Emma's, not her mother. Sarah will always be her mother, but be her family. Be my family. Build a life with us that doesn't involve running between two apartments and pretending you have somewhere else to be. Victoria was crying, and Daniel couldn't tell if that was good or catastrophic. I'm sorry, he said quickly. It's too fast. I shouldn't have… Yes. What? Yes, I'll move in. Yes, I want to build a life with you. Yes to all of it. She was laughing and crying simultaneously. I was so afraid you'd think 3 months was too soon, that you'd want more time, that I was pushing too hard by restructuring my entire career around being with you and Emma. You restructured your career for yourself, Daniel corrected gently. We just happened to benefit from that. No, I did it for all of us. Because I finally figured out what I actually want, and it's this. You, Emma, Tolstoy, this bookstore that smells like old paper and possibility, family dinners and poetry slams, and the kind of ordinary, extraordinary life I forgot existed. They kissed, and it felt like a promise. Not the scary kind that came with pressure and expectations, but the kind that felt like coming home. Emma burst through the door, subtlety abandoned entirely. I heard everything because the walls are thin and I was absolutely eavesdropping. Victoria's moving in. This is the best day ever. Can I help decorate? Can Victoria have the big closet? Can we get a bigger bed because 3 people and a dog won't fit in the current one? 3 people? Daniel repeated. Obviously, I'm going to have sleepovers in your room sometimes. I'm 8, not blind. You 2 are gross cute and I want to be part of the cuddle pile. Victoria laughed so hard she had to sit down. Gross cute? That's the best relationship description I've ever heard. You're welcome. I'm an excellent word inventor. Emma threw herself at Victoria. You're really staying? Forever? I'm really staying, Victoria confirmed. If that's okay with you. It's more than okay, it's perfect. Now we can be a real family instead of the pretend kind where you leave at weird times and Daddy gets all sad until you come back. Over Emma's head, Daniel and Victoria's eyes met, understanding passing between them that this was it, the moment everything became real and permanent and terrifyingly wonderful. The next week was chaos of the best kind. Victoria gave notice on her apartment, a sleek penthouse she'd barely lived in that held nothing of value except expensive furniture and the ghost of a life that had never felt like hers. Daniel and Emma helped pack, Emma providing color commentary on every single item and Victoria's questionable decorating choices. Why do you have 17 black blazers? Emma asked, holding one up. They all look the same. They're different. That one's charcoal, that one's midnight, that one's black. They're all black. This is why you need us. We'll teach you about colors. Victoria's team at Tech Vista threw her a party. Not a goodbye party. Marcus was very clear about that. But a congratulations on remembering you're human party. Daniel attended, less intimidated now by the world of tech executives and venture capitalists, more confident in his place at Victoria's side. Richard Chen, the venture capitalist who'd questioned Daniel at the gala, sought him out specifically. "I owe you an apology," Richard said without preamble. "I was condescending at that dinner, dismissive of your work. And I was wrong." Daniel blinked, surprised. "It's fine, really. It's not fine. I've been thinking about what you said, about not trying to change the world, just being there when someone needs saving. That's more valuable than most of what we do in this industry." He smiled ruefully. "My daughter's been begging me to take her to a bookstore instead of buying everything online. I looked up yours. We'll be visiting this weekend. We'd love to have you. Fair warning, she's 7 and has opinions about everything. You'll probably hear about them all." "Perfect. Emma's 8 and has even more opinions. They'll either be best friends or mortal enemies." They were best friends. Richard's daughter, Maya, became a regular at the bookstore's Saturday story hour, and Richard became one of those parents who lingered afterward, browsing and occasionally buying first editions with the careful attention of someone discovering a new passion. Victoria officially moved in on a rainy Saturday in late October. Emma had decorated the entire apartment with welcome signs and what she called strategic romantic touches that included candles, rose petals, and a hand-drawn family portrait featuring Daniel, Victoria, Emma, and Tolstoy wearing matching crowns. "We're royalty now?" Victoria asked, amused. "You said I was a princess at the gala. If I'm a princess, you're a queen, Daddy's a king, and Tolstoy's the royal dog. It's basic monarchy logic." Victoria's furniture merged with Daniel's secondhand collection in a way that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Expensive minimalism meeting comfortable chaos and creating something that felt like home. Her books filled the empty spaces on his shelves. Her coffee maker, professional and intimidating, replaced his that barely functioned. Her presence filled the apartment with a warmth that had been missing. That first night, with Emma asleep in her room and boxes still unpacked in the corners, Daniel and Victoria lay in bed together. Their bed now, in their home, building their life. "Are you happy?" Daniel asked. "Terrified and happy? Is that normal?" "I think that's love. Being scared of how much you have to lose while being grateful you have it at all." Victoria rolled over to face him, close enough that he could count the flecks of gold in her eyes. "I never thought I'd have this. A family. A home that feels like more than just a place to sleep. Someone who loves me for who I am instead of what I can do for them. I never thought I'd love again after Sarah. Didn't think I was capable of it." Daniel tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thank you for proving me wrong. Thank you for falling on me in that coffee shop. You fell on me." Semantics. The point is, we collided, and everything changed. They made love slowly, reverently, like they were still learning each other, even though by now every touch was familiar. Afterward, Victoria traced patterns on Daniel's chest, fingers mapping his heartbeat. "Emma asked me something the other day," she said quietly. "She wanted to know if I was going to be her mom now." Daniel's breath caught. "What did you say?" "I said I could never replace Sarah, and I wouldn't want to. But I could be someone who loves her completely and shows up for her always. A bonus parent. A chosen family member." Victoria's voice wavered. Was that the right answer? That was the perfect answer. She said that was good because she already had one mom in heaven and one mom on earth. Sounded like excellent life planning. Daniel felt tears on his face and didn't bother wiping them away. "She's extraordinary." "She is, and she's ours." Victoria said it with wonder, like she still couldn't quite believe it was real. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that felt both new and timeless. Victoria worked from home most days, strategic consulting and board meetings conducted from the dining room table, while Emma did homework nearby. Daniel ran the bookstore with increasing confidence, the business stabilizing into something sustainable. They had family dinners with Patricia every Sunday, Emma's story hours every Saturday, date nights when Patricia insisted on babysitting. The bookstore's success continued. They hired part-time staff, college students who loved books and didn't mind Tolstoy's constant presence. Started a podcast about overlooked literary gems that Emma co-hosted with surprising charisma. Partnered with schools for literacy programs that Victoria funded through her foundation. But it was the small moments that mattered most. Victoria teaching Emma how to negotiate for a better bedtime. Daniel teaching Victoria how to make his grandmother's soup recipe. The three of them reading together on the couch, each with their own book, existing in comfortable silence. Tolstoy's opinion on every major household decision. On a cold December evening, Daniel found Victoria in what had become her favorite spot. The window seat in the apartment, looking out at the city lights with a book in her lap that she wasn't reading. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, settling beside her. "How different my life is now. 6 months ago, I was alone in a sterile apartment, working until midnight, convinced that was what success looked like." She leaned against him. "Now I'm here, with you and Emma, reading for pleasure, having opinions about what constitutes proper hot chocolate marshmallow ratios. And I've never been happier. Any regrets? Only that it took me so long to figure out what mattered. Better late than never." "Is it, though? I wasted so much time chasing the wrong things. You weren't ready before. Neither was I. We had to become the people we are now before we could find each other." Daniel kissed her temple. "Timing matters. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to." Emma appeared, wearing her pajamas and her most serious expression. "Family meeting, living room, now. It's important." They gathered on the couch, Tolstoy immediately claiming the middle position with the shamelessness of a dog who knew he was loved. Emma stood before them like a tiny CEO about to deliver a presentation. "I've been thinking, and I have a proposal." "This sounds official," Victoria said, amused. "It is official, very official." Emma took a breath. "I want Victoria to adopt me. Not legally necessarily, because paperwork is complicated and Mommy is still my mom, even in heaven. But I want Victoria to be my mom, too. My Earth mom. My chosen mom. My right now mom." The room went absolutely silent. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Obviously say yes. You already do all the mom things. You help with homework and make me eat vegetables and tell me when I'm being ridiculous. You love me and Daddy loves you and I love you and we're already a family. I just want to make it official." "Sweetheart," Daniel said gently, "Victoria might need time to think about—" "I don't need time," Victoria interrupted, voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Emma, yes. I would be honored to be your mom. Your Earth mom, your chosen mom, your right now mom. All of it." Emma launched herself at Victoria, and they held each other while both cried. Daniel wrapped his arms around them both, and Tolstoy wormed his way into the middle because he had excellent instincts about when group hugs were happening. "This is my family," Emma said, muffled against Victoria's shoulder. "My whole family. And it's perfect." "It is perfect," Victoria agreed. "Completely, absolutely perfect." That night, after Emma had gone to bed clutching a promise that they'd figure out how to make the adoption official, even if it was just ceremonial, Victoria and Daniel lay awake talking about the future. "I want to marry you," Daniel said suddenly. "I know it's soon and we're still figuring things out and maybe I should wait, but I want to marry you. I want Emma to be right that we're a family forever. I want to make promises in front of people who matter and keep those promises until we're old and gray and still arguing about proper coffee-making techniques." Victoria was silent for so long that Daniel started to panic. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "That was too much too fast. Forget I said—" "I want to marry you too," Victoria whispered. "I've been thinking about it for weeks, but was afraid to say anything because what if you thought it was crazy? We've only been together 6 months. 6 months that feel like forever in the best possible way." "Exactly." She rolled over to face him. "So ask me, properly, right now." "I don't have a ring. I don't need a ring. I need you, asking me, being brave enough to want this." Daniel took her hands, heart hammering. "Victoria Lane, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Emma's mom and Tolstoy's co-owner? Will you build a life with me that's messy and imperfect and full of love anyway? Yes, to all of it. Yes. They kissed, and it tasted like promises and possibility, and the kind of future neither of them had dared to hope for. The next morning, they told Emma over breakfast. She stared at them for exactly 3 seconds, then screamed so loud that Tolstoy barked and the neighbors probably called the police. You're getting married! We're getting married! I mean, I'm not getting married because I'm 8, but we're becoming an official family. Can I be the flower girl? Can I help plan? Can we have cake? Obviously, we're having cake. What kind of cake? Emma, breathe, Daniel said, laughing. I'm breathing. I'm just breathing very excitedly. She grabbed both their hands. This is the best thing that's ever happened. Better than when Tolstoy learned to high five. Better than when the bookstore started making money. Better than everything. They planned a small wedding for early spring, nothing fancy or formal, just family and close friends in the bookstore, surrounded by books and the life they'd built together. Patricia cried when they told her, happy tears that she didn't bother hiding. Marcus immediately volunteered to handle logistics with the efficiency of someone used to managing Victoria's life. The months between engagement and wedding were a blur of happiness. Emma threw herself into wedding planning with the intensity she brought to everything, creating binders and spreadsheets and detailed timelines that would make professional planners jealous. Victoria's restructuring of Tech Vista proved successful. The company thrived under new leadership while she enjoyed actually having time to live. Daniel's bookstore continued to grow, becoming the kind of community hub he'd always dreamed it could be. But more than any of that, they became a family. Not perfectly, not without struggles, but authentically. They fought sometimes, about Victoria's tendency to overwork when stressed, about Daniel's habit of not asking for help when he needed it, about Emma's creative interpretation of bedtime. They made up, learned, adjusted, grew together instead of apart. On a bright March morning, with cherry blossoms just beginning to bloom outside the bookstore windows, Daniel Hart married Victoria Lane in front of 50 people who loved them. Emma stood between them during the ceremony, holding both their hands, wearing a dress she'd picked herself, and a flower crown Victoria's mother had made. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Emma raised her hand. I object to this taking so long. Everyone knows they love each other. Can we skip to the kissing part and get to the cake? The entire room laughed, and the officiant, a friend of Patricia's who'd known Victoria since childhood, smiled. The bride's daughter makes an excellent point. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss your bride. Daniel kissed Victoria like he was sealing a promise he intended to keep forever. When they broke apart, Emma hugged them both with the fierce joy of someone who'd helped make this happen. We did it, she whispered. We're a real family now. We were always a real family, Victoria said. This just makes it official. The reception was perfect chaos. Emma's friends running between bookshelves, Tolstoy wearing a bow tie and accepting treats from admirers, Patricia slow dancing with Richard Chen of all people, while his daughter Maya DJ'd from someone's phone. Victoria's tech world colleagues mixed with Daniel's bookstore customers, different worlds colliding and creating something new. Late in the evening, Daniel found Victoria on the small balcony, looking out at the city lights like she had that first night they'd admitted they were falling in love. Hi, wife, he said. She turned, smiled, brilliant and real. Hi, husband. How does it feel? Terrifying and perfect. You? Same. I keep thinking about that day in the coffee shop, how I was exhausted and distracted and literally fell into your life. Best accident that ever happened to me. Same. She laced her fingers through his. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. The real me underneath all the armor and performance. For loving that person even when she was difficult and scared and convinced she didn't deserve this. Thank you for staying, for not running when it got hard, for choosing us over everything else you could have had. This is everything else I could have had. Don't you get it? This is the thing I was missing. You, Emma, this ridiculous bookstore full of people and possibilities. This is what success actually looks like. Emma appeared in the doorway. You two are being gross cute again. Stop hiding and come dance. Maya and I choreographed something, and it's very impressive and possibly dangerous. They went inside to watch 8-year-olds perform an elaborate dance routine that was indeed both impressive and dangerous. Later, after guests had left and Emma had fallen asleep on the couch mid-celebration, Daniel and Victoria stood in their bookstore, their home, their family's space, and marveled at how far they'd come. "I love you," Victoria said. "I'm going to say it every day for the rest of our lives until you're sick of hearing it." "I'll never be sick of hearing it." "Good, because I'm not stopping." They carried Emma upstairs to bed, tucked her in together, and stood watching her sleep for a moment. "She was right," Daniel whispered, "about everything. About us being meant for each other. About family being the people who choose to love you. About how sometimes the scariest things are the most worth doing. She's 8 going on 80. It's terrifying how wise she is. She learned it from you. She learned it from all of us. From Sarah, who loved her enough to make her believe in happy endings. From you, who showed her that grief doesn't mean giving up on joy. From me, who's still learning that vulnerability is strength. They went to bed in their home, in their life, building their future one day at a time. 5 years later, on Emma's 13th birthday, she stood in Heart and Daughter. Now Heart and Daughter, and Lane, the sign had been updated, and looked around at the full bookstore with satisfaction. The store had tripled in size, taking over the space next door. They'd added a cafe that Victoria managed, a performance space for readings and poetry, a whole section dedicated to diverse voices that Emma had personally curated. The Instagram account had 500,000 followers. They'd published a book about saving small businesses that had become a bestseller, but more than any professional success, they'd built a life. Victoria had fully transitioned from CEO to philanthropist, running a foundation focused on literacy and small business support. Daniel had written a memoir about grief and hope that had resonated with more people than he'd imagined possible. Emma had become a vocal advocate for chosen families and complicated love stories. At the birthday party, held in the bookstore because Emma insisted, surrounded by books and friends and Tolstoy, who was now a very dignified old dog, Emma gave a speech. "When I was 8, my dad was sad, and our bookstore was failing, and I thought maybe happy endings were just in books, not real life. Then Victoria fell on my dad, literally fell on him. It was very dramatic, and everything changed." The crowd laughed. Victoria, standing next to Daniel with her arm around his waist, shook her head fondly. "They taught me that family isn't just about biology. It's about choosing each other every day. It's about being brave enough to love people even when you're scared. It's about showing up and staying and building something together that's bigger than any one person." Emma looked directly at Victoria and Daniel. "So thank you for being brave, for choosing each other and choosing me, for showing me that sometimes the best things come from accidents and falls and collisions that change everything." She raised her glass of sparkling cider. "To family, the kind you're born with and the kind you build. Both matter, both are real, both are love." Everyone raised their glasses, and in that moment, Daniel looked at Victoria, his wife, his partner, his best accident, and felt the kind of gratitude that had no words. They'd started as strangers in a coffee shop, a CEO running from herself and a widower drowning in grief, colliding because physics and fate decided they needed to. And they'd become this. A family, a partnership, a love story that was messy and real and absolutely worth every terrifying moment. That night, after guests had left and Emma had gone to bed clutching the journal Victoria had given her, Daniel and Victoria sat in their bookstore, surrounded by stories of every kind. "We did okay," Daniel said. "Didn't we? We did better than okay. We did extraordinary. I love you, Victoria Lane Hart. I love you, Daniel Hart. Thank you for catching me when I fell. Thank you for falling in the first place." They kissed, and it still felt like the first time, thrilling and safe and full of promise. Outside, the city continued its endless dance of lights and lives and stories being written. But inside Heart and Daughter and Lane, in a bookstore that had become a home and a family, two people who'd been brave enough to love again held each other close and lived happily, imperfectly, messily, authentically, ever after. The end.